They say every great journey starts with a single step. But what if you leapt instead? This is the tale of Naruto Uzumaki, a boy left behind by those who should have stood by him, overlooked by a world too blind to see his worth. But those days are over. No longer a pawn in someone else's game, Naruto now holds all the power. And he's ready to play by his own rules. A tired sigh escaped his lips as his eyes scanned the small clearing. The old man's gaze settled on the only person he could see for quite a distance, hopefully the only one within several miles. But knowing his usual luck, that was unlikely. Someone else was bound to notice it if they hadn't already. Not now. Not when everything's teetering on the edge. In truth, he couldn't blame anyone but himself. He had known this day would eventually arrive. And the consequences, well, those would be on his shoulders. If only he'd spoken to the boy earlier, perhaps things wouldn't be so complicated now. But with things as they stood, there was no avoiding the long-overdue explanations. So, what's the plan? The aged village leader didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped forward, weaving effortlessly between the glimmering spikes that jutted from the ground, towering prisms that shimmered with color, reflecting the dying light of the sun. It was a scene Sarutobi would remember forever. But there was no time to admire it now. Too much had to be done. This won't end well, no matter how we try to spin it, came the quiet voice of the white-haired sage. Sarutobi snorted as he knelt beside the unconscious Genin. You think I don't know that? But at this point, we don't have the luxury of choice. Jiraiya shifted uneasily. Far as I can tell, no one else was nearby when it happened, but we can't assume that'll hold. Someone always finds out. A pause. Who knows already? My former teammates. And a few trusted ANBU. It was one of them who reported it, after all. They've kept the secret this long, I believe they'll continue to do so. He gave a thin, dry smile. Why do you think they tolerated Naruto's antics all this time? Jiraiya frowned. I would have pegged them as the last people you trust. How'd you keep them in line? Sarutobi gave him a sharp look. Contrary to what you think, my teammates aren't heartless. Like Danzo, they do what they believe is necessary for the village. And they understood, Naruto already carries more than enough on his shoulders. If his condition became public, the political blowback could be catastrophic, and if word reached other nations, well, you know how that would play out. Jiraiya didn't need to think hard. Other nations would come sniffing around. Once they learned Naruto held the Nine Tails, they'd dig deeper. Discovering his lineage would put him at the center of a geopolitical storm. Assassination attempts, kidnappings, no matter how loyal the boy was, it wouldn't end well. It'd be chaos, he muttered. So, what now, another seal? No, Sarutobi's answer was immediate, firm. I've already sealed him once. This ability, it first manifested when he was younger, under emotional distress. He doesn't remember it's buried deep, but I'm not sealing him again, especially not after what he went through. You should have told me, Jiraiya said, voice edged with frustration. Why hide it from me all this time? For the same reason I kept the Nine Tails a secret, to protect him. Jiraiya opened his mouth to argue, then shut it again. He couldn't refute that. There are silver linings, Sarutobi mused. When he first displayed this ability, I was shocked. The last person I knew who could do it was Kushina's grandfather. He was ancient when I met him. I recognized a few of his techniques. It's a powerful, though inconsistent, gift. If he can learn to control it, it'd be a major asset, Jiraiya agreed, though his face was troubled. But this changes everything. I'll have to scrap the plans I had for his training. I'll train him, Jiraiya blinked. Come again, Sarutobi's eyes were resolute. I've held him back too long, kept him in the dark for too long. I may not be cage strong anymore, but I'm still a teacher. You're proof enough of that. There's a month and a half until the next exam. From this point forward, I'll train Naruto myself with help from you and my old teammates. You're serious? Jiraiya's voice was grave. You still have a village to run. I'm serious. My time's nearly up anyway. Kakashi can manage things if needed. But right now, while I still can, I need to prepare him. The same way my mentor prepared me. You really think he's ready for that kind of future? You've seen him these past 2 weeks. Do you doubt him? Jiraiya didn't answer. Naruto was unpredictable and rough, but beneath it all the potential was unmistakable. Raw talent and sheer willpower. What he lacked in polish, he made up for with determination. It'll take time, more than I may have, but I'll get him started on the right path. He doesn't need bloodlines or beasts, his spirit alone is enough. Jiraiya gave a wry smile. He's got her fire, that's for sure. Does he know about her? Sarutobi shook his head. Too young when she passed, I kept that from him too. Safer that way. Imagine the reaction if the villagers knew he was related to the one who killed our last Daimyo. Jiraiya grimaced. They'd have torn him apart. Exactly, another burden he doesn't need. He's going to lose it when he finds out. Which is why I already set a seal to regulate things. I wanted him to develop his own strength first. When I taught him water walking, he picked it up quickly. With the seal off, his chakra control improves dramatically. That's when I started working on his elemental natures, and then this happened. Wind, earth, and water, Jiraiya muttered. Sarutobai's eyes widened slightly. 3, I had 3 but it's rare. Most shinobi only have 2 max, Jiraiya nodded. Exactly, that's why I worry about his maturity, not his potential. That will come, Sarutobai said with finality. I'll see to it personally. You were no saint yourself, remember? He stood, stepping back through the prism field. His chakras drained, he'll be out until morning. We need to move fast. I'll take Naruto and meet with my old teammates. You destroy the evidence, Jiraiya nodded. I can handle that. Lightning, wind, or fire chakra should break these crystals apart, or I can use raw chakra manipulation like the Rasengan. Good, once you're done, join us. I'll start him on jutsu training tailored to his affinities. You'll help with what you know about his new abilities. The others will impersonate me to keep things quiet. This won't be easy, Jiraiya muttered. No, Sarutobai agreed, already moving. But it's still possible, go now. Yes, sensei, damn it. The curse came with a grin, lips curled despite the searing pain. His left hand clamped down on his mangled right, trying to slow the blood pouring from shredded skin. His middle finger bent unnaturally in 2 places. The ring finger jutted sideways, and his thumb gone. What remained of his hand was a ruin. For most, the damage would spell the end of their journey. But he wasn't like most. He never had been. His jaw clenched as he collapsed against a nearby tree, letting his body slump to the ground. He shut his eyes tightly, trying to ignore the throbbing torment racing up his arm. The pain was his own fault. He had pushed too far again. Why? What was the point anymore? He wasn't even sure he cared about the life of a shinobi. So why did he keep breaking himself apart just to feel something? Because it's the only path to the truth, Naruto. That mocking smile vanished. His whole expression fell, overtaken by something colder. A breath escaped him, sharp and weary, but not from injury. No, this was different. This ache was deeper. It lived in his chest. 12 years old and already so sick of it all. Of life. He used to think he was a decent person. Tried to believe he had a good heart. He didn't want to hurt others. His dreams had once felt worthwhile. But now, was this some divine comedy? Was his entire existence a cosmic punchline? Maybe, it would explain a lot. Still, wallowing in misery wouldn't change anything. He'd learned that lesson young. Crying never solved anything for someone like him. His life didn't come with a fix. Only layers of new problems. You really are pitiful, aren't you? A faint, bitter chuckle escaped. The burning in his hand dulled slightly, a sign that healing had already begun. The Ninetails chakra had flared up instantly, probably reacting to the latest modification on the seal, courtesy of the Toad Sage. He wasn't mad at the man. He meant well, trying to prevent disaster after Orochimaru's latest scheme. But still, would it have been so terrible to just let it end? Wouldn't it be easier to just disappear? Why do you keep doing this to yourself? The Hidden Leaf's training fields were built for variety, designed to suit different kinds of training. Most stayed near the center of the village. But Naruto was never like most, which is why Sarutobi Hiruzen now stood deep in the outer edges of the woods on a cold autumn night. The old Hokage's eyes landed on the boy, who sat breathing heavily, chest rising and falling with quiet exertion. His stamina, once seen as endless, was finally showing signs of strain. One eye opened to peer at the old man before closing again, a wicked smirk forming as Naruto dropped flat onto the earth. Why not push myself? Should I care? Hiruzen frowned. He felt an old irritation stir, though he knew better than to voice it. That kind of response should have been expected from the start. Do you resent me, Naruto? I'm filled with resentment. The softness of his words belied the sharp sting behind them. Hiruzen flinched. He could feel the raw emotion in them, seeping from the boy into his very bones. Not toward anyone in particular, Naruto added quietly. And not toward myself, not anymore, it's everything. The entire world, the system we're forced to live in. I hate it. The old man sighed deeply, taking a long draw from his pipe. It was an unconscious habit, one that only showed when he was troubled, and this boy always troubled him. He pulled his cloak tighter as if to ward off a sudden chill, though the air was still. I understand. A sharp blue eye opened again, unblinking. No, you don't. You think I'm just upset, but this isn't some vague bitterness. This is hate. The real kind. I despise the world for what it's done to me, for pretending I don't exist, for robbing me of everything. There was nothing the Hokage could say, just silence. The boy's words echoed in his mind. A truth spoken by someone far too young to carry it. Can I ask you something, Naruto? He removed the pipe from his mouth, waiting for acknowledgement. Is your hatred aimed more strongly at some than others? Naruto gave a short laugh. Of course it is. If I hated everyone equally, then I'd be no better than what they claim I am. Just a mindless beast reacting to its cage. But I'm not, I'm aware. That's what makes it worse. And who do you hate the most? Do I really need to answer that? No, of course not, he already knew. I bet you never wished you were an orphan, Naruto said after a pause. But then, I don't know how you grew up. Not like this, never like this. But I do wish it. Every day, I'd rather have no one. I'd rather be alone than have family who won't even look at me, who ignore me like I'm nothing. That's worse, that's cruelty disguised as kindness. Hiruzen bit back the urge to defend anyone. He had no right. He had doubted Naruto once too. No amount of justification could undo that. And Naruto, wise beyond his years, had seen through it all from the start. There's no worse pain than being given something precious for the first time, and then losing it. Learning you have a family, only to realize they don't care. That's what really breaks people. That had been the only time Hiruzen ever thought Naruto might actually break. But somehow, the boy had kept going. Naruto shifted suddenly, drawing his knees up before flipping neatly to his feet. He dusted off his garish orange outfit, a uniform of mockery in a world that preached stealth. It was the kind of thing only a legend could get away with. If you can kill me, then maybe I deserve it. One day, that color would be remembered. Later, old man, got a busy day ahead. Hiruzen nodded, eyes drifting skyward. For some reason, the moon always glowed brighter in this field. It sparkled like a jewel. In his memory, it reflected the eyes of, "Hey, old man." Naruto paused but didn't look back. Do you think it's okay to want to die? There was no surprise in the Hokage's expression, only a slow pull from his pipe. No. It's not okay, but it is human. Still, anyone who gives up is running. No matter the pain, there's never a good excuse for surrender. A faint, bitter smile tugged at his lips. Everyone but you, Naruto. It was clear that those were the exact words the boy had longed to hear. You really are a damn idiot, huh? The blonde cracked open an eye, lazily glancing up the tree. And there he was, Jiraiya, the infamous toad sage and self-proclaimed super pervert, watching him with a less-than-pleased expression. Naruto didn't have it in him to care anymore. You're better than this, kid. Naruto let out a dry snort. And you'd know that how? We barely know each other. I've seen more than enough over the past couple weeks. You weren't always like this, Naruto. This isn't you. The disappointment in Jiraiya's tone was obvious, but Naruto couldn't be bothered. He no longer sought validation, not from him, not from anyone. Jiraiya frowned at the silence, landing softly beside him. Naruto spared him a single glance before closing his eyes again, savoring the quiet. It didn't last. Listen, I might not fully understand your situation, but I've seen enough to get the gist. Naruto scoffed in disbelief. Still, I won't just sit here and let you rot. Your old man wouldn't have. I don't care. The outburst was loud, venomous. It startled even Naruto. Jiraiya took a cautious step back, grimacing at the intensity before exhaling slowly, his expression darkening. I don't care what he wanted, or what anyone else wants. Just like they've never cared about me. I'm done pretending to be the happy fool. Done acting like I'm too dense to see what's really happening. Stop talking to me about him. About her. Don't even mention. His voice cracked mid-sentence and the words choked in his throat. He lowered his head, hiding his face beneath his bangs. No tears, not now, not anymore. He was done feeling, but Jiraiya wasn't. Kid, I don't know how to fix this, but I do know sulking here won't help. You haven't shown up for training in days. I'm not going back, Naruto muttered. I'm done being a shinobi, Jiraiya snorted. After all that talk about becoming Hokage, that's nonsense. If you really meant it, you'd be out here pushing yourself right now. You said you wanted to be remembered, didn't you? What changed? Your old teammate did. She showed me how pointless it all is. No matter what I do, they'll never acknowledge me, not even my own parents. Anger flickered across the toad sage's face. Then make them acknowledge you. Earn it. Earn my respect while you're at it. I've already lost everything. I want to see you shove it in their faces. Make them regret how they treated you. Make them eat every word they ever used to tear you down. Naruto looked up at him, eyes narrowing. I'm not sure I follow. Sure you do, you've thought about it. Here's the deal, get up, train harder than you ever have. Grow stronger but not with the Nine-Tails power, on your own merit. If you do, I'll drop everything else and help you find the truth behind all this. I'll hunt down the ones who made you feel like this, and you can get your answers by force if you want. I'll back you all the way, even if the Hokage himself gives me a different mission. Naruto's expression twisted in disbelief. It sounded too good, too convenient. And what's in it for you? Just the satisfaction of seeing their faces when they realize how badly they screwed up. You really think I can pull that off? Absolutely. But it's not about what I think, it's about what you're willing to do. How far you're ready to go to chase your new goals. New goals? He didn't need to say anything. Get up. The words were heavy, commanding, and somehow his body moved on instinct. Trembling and weak, Naruto pushed himself to his feet. It took him a moment, but he stood, barely. Jiraiya didn't offer a hand. He simply watched, letting Naruto own the choice he'd made. That was pathetic, he said bluntly. Your last attempt was a step backward. Naruto gave a faint smile and shrugged. Not good enough, try again. Forming 3 seals, Naruto pulled in a deep breath, drawing what little chakra he had left into his lungs and expelling it in a single, forceful burst. Wind style, drilling air bullet. The compressed wind sphere exploded from his mouth, streaking toward the training post. It slammed into the target, splintering it into a dusty cloud of shattered wood. Acceptable, the third Hokage muttered, clad in his old battle gear. That was the best so far, you maintained form and did real damage. Naruto didn't answer. He was hunched over, gasping for breath. You'll need time to master it fully without backlash. But there's an upside, your lung capacity will grow. The body's full potential is rarely tapped. In crisis, we exceed what we think are our limits. That's what the 8 gates are based on. Still breathless, Naruto gave a slow nod and straightened. Hiruzen was quietly amazed. He'd expected the usual hyperactive pest, or worse, a brooding boy simmering with resentment. What he got instead was a driven, focused learner. Naruto took in every lesson and adjusted immediately. It was unsettling in a good way. Had he always had this potential? Had he, the old fool, ignored it all along? Yes, he had. Just like everyone else. He, too, had once assumed Naruto would only scrape by, not because of behavior but because he underestimated him from the start. The son of the 4th, how could anyone overlook that? No more. One more round, a nod, hands formed seals. Hiruzen couldn't help but smile. This next task isn't easy, the old Hokage warned. Naruto sucked in a breath, already worn out from the last barrage. Hiruzen stood under the shade of a tree, observing closely. 2 weeks had passed since they began, and he was genuinely impressed. Naruto struggled with textbooks and hated lectures, but once Hiruzen realized he was a kinesthetic learner, one who learns best through doing, the process shifted entirely. Show then drill, that was the key, and it worked. As Jiraiya no doubt explained, jutsu typically breaks into 2 categories, chakra form and elemental nature. One focuses on shaping chakra, the other on converting it into a natural element. Like fire or water jutsu, Naruto interjected. And substitution jutsu would count as chakra shape control, right? Sarutobi gave a brief nod. That's right. It confirmed he'd been paying attention, his main shortcoming. To create or truly master a jutsu, one needs a solid understanding of at least one of 2 foundational aspects, if not both. Techniques that combine both tend to rank higher in power and complexity, usually falling into the B rank or above. A prime example is the water dragon technique, which requires nature transformation to gather a large volume of water and shape transformation to mold it into a dragon form. The genin followed his words carefully, nodding as he processed the explanation. It made far more sense phrased this way than the overly detailed breakdowns Uruka often used. Now let's explore nature transformation in greater depth. The Hokage continued, reaching into his white robes to retrieve his familiar pipe from its hidden pocket. I want to delve into the nature of elemental-style ninjutsu. Most are assumed to be hereditary in nature. The blonde teen straightened up, sensing where the 3rd Hokage might be leading. He clenched his fist, a flicker of excitement rising. At last, he was about to start learning what had always been kept from him. If Sarutobi noticed the change in his posture, he didn't comment. Calmly, he lit his pipe using a delicate application of fire chakra, inhaled slowly, and savored the fragrant smoke before releasing it with a deep exhale. Some keke genkai, he said thoughtfully as the smoke curled into the air, aren't strictly limited by bloodlines. In many cases, they're the result of combining specific chakra natures in precise ratios. These combinations tend to remain within families due to shared chakra affinities and traditions, passed down from experienced users unwilling to share their secrets with outsiders. The young shinobi sat quietly, absorbing every word. These abilities are also labeled keke genkai, like the Byakugan of the Hyuga or the Sharingan of the Uchiha, but there exists an even rarer form, one that's typically more devastating. At this point, he stepped forward, moving from where he leaned against the tree until he stood just before the boy. He took another puff from his pipe before continuing. As I mentioned, elemental Kekkei Genkai arise from the fusion of two chakra natures into a new element. However, even more formidable combinations exist, those requiring at least 3 elemental affinities. These are known as Kekkei Toda, or advanced bloodline limits. The genin blinked, surprised by the information. His thoughts drifted to the battle in the Land of Waves and the strange techniques used by the boy who had impacted him so deeply. The description aligned with what that boy had once told him. "I imagine you're thinking of that mission in Wave," the Hokage said, correctly guessing. "And if you weren't, it's the example I'd bring up anyway. According to the mission report, you formed a bond with a boy who turned out to be your enemy. Setting aside the implications of that, let's discuss the unique nature of his techniques." "The ice jutsu," Naruto murmured. "He talked about all this, I just didn't get it until now." Sarutobi nodded, taking another long pull from his pipe. The Yuki clan was once prominent in the Land of Water. They specialized in water-style ninjutsu, and, more famously, in ice release. Before the formation of the modern shinobi villages, during the clan wars, the Yukis dominated a region bordering the swamplands, making excellent use of the high humidity and moisture. They spent generations refining their craft. He paused before continuing. "That's a textbook case of an elemental Kekkei Genkai. You've seen firsthand how versatile and deadly it can be." Their clan guarded those secrets fiercely, which is what made your report about that boy so remarkable. I had little direct experience with the Yukis, but I had never heard of any ice technique that created reflective mirrors. Sarutobi's eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke. "I suspect he developed that jutsu himself, likely with some guidance from Mamachi Zabuza. To use it so effectively at his age means he'd been training with it for years. That alone speaks volumes about his potential." Naruto nodded slowly, his thoughts lingering on Haku. The boy could have easily been considered a prodigy, perhaps even more so than Sasuke or Neji. Yet with all that power he had still died. It was a sobering thought. He himself didn't have that kind of talent, at least not yet. "Now, let's compare Kekkei Genkai and Kekkei Toda," Sarutobi went on. "The key difference lies in rarity. As I said, Kekkei Toda are almost unheard of. Outside of ice release, I can list maybe 5 known elemental Kekkei Genkai off the top of my head. The first 2 are the Scorch release, used in the Wind Country, and the Wood release my sensei, the first Hokage, was famous for." He removed his pipe and gave Naruto a penetrating look that made the boy tense. "In all my years as a shinobi, I can only confirm one ability classified as a Kekkei Toda, and only 2 individuals ever mastered it, both of whom served as Tsuchikage." Naruto's eyes widened. The realization that Haku's impressive abilities were still considered lesser compared to what the Hokage was describing was hard to comprehend. Haku had been elite, even deadly. Yet the Hokage was talking about a level even higher, one where S-rank shinobi operated. He wasn't the brightest, but Naruto understood the sheer scale of difference between Kakashi and Orochimaru. His short encounter during the Chunin exams had left no doubt. If one additional chakra nature could create that kind of power gap, it was staggering. The dust release, Jinten, was created by the second Tsuchikage, Mu. Known as the Invisible Man for his unmatched stealth, Mu could disintegrate targets on a molecular level using Jinten techniques. He also learned to levitate and manipulate massive objects with ease. Naruto listened, in awe. The level of ninjutsu being described sounded like something out of legend. It made even the flashiest techniques he'd seen seem minor in comparison. Mu later trained his successor, a distant relative with the same chakra combination. That man became the third Tsuchikage. "Our battles were titanic," Sarutobi added with a wistful smile. "I often wonder if the shinobi of today can truly understand how wild and untamed our world once was." He shook his head, brushing off the memories. "As I said, Dust Release is the only confirmed Kekkei Toda, but I believe 2 others may also qualify. One is the Magnet Release, used by the deceased third Kazekage, which controlled iron sand with frightening precision." He paused again, locking eyes with Naruto. "The second is Crystal Release." Naruto froze. That strange, painful surge of chakra he'd experienced, the one that tore at his insides and left him gasping, was that what the old man meant? "The technique you've used, though only instinctively, has only been seen once before," the Hokage said. "By a man named Uzumaki Shinto, your great-grandfather." Naruto's heart nearly stopped. Another lost piece of his identity revealed, proof that his name, his clan, meant something. "When I met Shinto, he was already advanced in age. Yet like most of your clan, he was vigorous and full of life. I once saw him spar against the first Hokage. If he had been a few decades younger, he might have won. Sarutobi looked up. The sun was setting, and the first stars were beginning to glimmer above. Their training had lasted the entire day, and somehow, it still hadn't been enough. The genin exhaled slowly as the cold bit at his skin. A shiver crawled up his spine, and his breath misted in the chilled air. Shirtless and barefoot, he stood in awe for what must have been the 10th time that evening, admiring the Sandaime Hokage's handiwork. The man was even more brilliant than Naruto had imagined. To freeze an entire lake solid in late spring using just chakra control, Naruto could only dream of reaching that level. Focus, the blonde reminded himself, scanning the barren surroundings with sharp blue eyes. Where is he? He was standing on the icy arena in nothing but shorts. The rules of this exercise were clear. Stay conscious. The slippery surface made maintaining balance a constant battle, forcing him to keep a steady stream of chakra flowing through his feet. At the same time, he had to emit a slow, controlled release of chakra from his upper body to stave off the bitter cold. This was a higher-level chakra discipline introduced by the Hokage just a day earlier. After Naruto had demonstrated mastery over the water-walking technique, even while fighting, the Hokage had yanked him off the surface and, with a single technique, turned the water beneath him into solid ice. Naruto had stood speechless, marveling at the transformation, while keeping his ears open to the old man's wisdom. You never know what kind of terrain you'll face on a mission, the Hokage had said. You have to prepare for it all. The elder had shared stories of his wartime missions, how unpredictable the battlefield could be, and how even something as mundane as the stench of a swamp could cost you victory, or worse, your life. Expect the unexpected, Naruto. The Hokage's voice had been firm. With each promotion, missions become more dangerous. Intelligence only takes you so far. Clients may lie, situations may change. You've already experienced that. Naruto had taken those words to heart. Every piece of advice, every bit of knowledge, he held onto tightly. The longer he trained under the Hokage, the more he grew to appreciate his unique style, part trial by fire, part hands-on teaching. It was cause and effect with physical consequences, and Naruto thrived under it. Training had never been this enjoyable. For once, he looked forward to it. He woke up driven, hungry to learn, and collapsed into bed each night exhausted but fulfilled. He knew the window wouldn't stay open forever, so he was determined to absorb everything he could. 2 weeks remained until the Chunin exams. He was ready to make each day count. A faint disturbance on the wind caught his ears. He moved long before the shuriken even reached him, gliding across the ice with chakra-enhanced precision. His senses sharpened, his chakra flaring gently across his skin, reaching into the environment. Just a week ago, they'd discovered he had budding potential as a sensory type. Whether it was his lineage or the fox sealed inside him, no one could say for sure, but the ability was promising. It gave him another edge, another reason to refine his control. Like now, he could feel movement under the ice. With improved focus, Naruto sent chakra into the frozen surface, shifting it just in time to jump back as a thick fist erupted from beneath him. A massive form burst forth. His sparring opponent had arrived. The Sarutobi clan's summoned contract beasts were a different breed. They were strong, agile, and used their tails like extra limbs in combat. Naruto had learned this the hard way. His block came up fast, textbook form, just like the Hokage had shown him. The punch was halted inches from his face. He quickly retreated as the simian attacker pressed in, throwing combinations of punches, kicks, and spinning tail strikes. Naruto responded, putting into practice everything he'd learned. Though still outmatched, he no longer collapsed immediately under pressure. The two clashed in a high-speed bout across the frozen arena, their movements nearly invisible to the untrained eye. He ducked under a hook and countered with a sweep to the ribs, only for it to be deflected. The monkey followed up with a knee strike, but Naruto pivoted smoothly, redirecting his balance with circular chakra motion. He spun around and launched a backfist, which was narrowly avoided. The monkey fell backward into a one-armed brace, transforming its failed knee into a snapping front kick that struck true. Naruto grunted as the blow sent him skidding, but he didn't fall. Chakra surged from his soles to re-anchor him, and he forced steady breaths as the assault continued. He blocked what he could, dodged the rest, never once giving in. Taijutsu had never been his forte, largely due to poor instruction. But now, for the first time, he felt competent. He couldn't beat someone like Neji in a straight-up brawl just yet, but at least he wouldn't crumble in the first few seconds. Enough, both combatants froze at the command. Naruto gasped for breath, sweat mixing with the cold as the Hokage approached with his hands behind his back. He eyed the two of them with a satisfied expression. Excellent work. Both of you, he said with a puff of his pipe. Looks like you actually got a workout this time, Sanji. The monkey Sanji gave a brief nod, panting lightly. A flicker of pride sparked in Naruto's chest. He had done that. Just a week ago, he hadn't even lasted a minute. Now, he had held his own. Thank you for your assistance. Be sure to send Enma my regards. Sarutobi offered a respectful nod, and Sanji bowed before vanishing in a puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared, Sarutobi turned fully to the boy. You've made tremendous progress. Your taijutsu has come far in a short time, he praised. And it was true, Naruto's growth had exceeded all expectations. Remember to maintain your physical training. Many young shinobi neglect it, drawn instead to flashy ninjutsu. But in many cases, close combat decides who walks away alive. Naruto furrowed his brow. But isn't it bad to focus on too many skills? I thought that was something they taught at the academy. The Hokage nodded thoughtfully. That's true for most. A jack of all trades often ends up mediocre. But someone with your potential has no excuse not to be versatile. You can afford to round yourself out. And you should. Naruto rolled his shoulders, still catching his breath. So what's next? Now we begin the summoning segment, the Hokage stated with a small smile. I've got something special lined up for you. Consider it a reward for your efforts. The blonde teen's lips twitched into a brief smile before he reined it in. What I'm about to offer you, the elder continued, is extremely beneficial and equally dangerous. Years ago, during my time as a jounin, I encountered a formidable shinobi from the now-defunct Hot Springs village. He wielded an unusual form of summoning. After our battle, I recovered his summoning scroll. Unusual, the blonde echoed, tilting his head. Unusual in terms of abilities, the Hokage nodded. Abilities you'll have to uncover yourself. Summon contracts are rare and considered high-level assets by the village. Konoha holds 10 contracts in general circulation. Typically, gaining access requires special jounin status or higher. However, certain exceptions exist. This is one of them. So I can try to form a contract with them, the blonde asked, eyes wide with hope. The Hokage nodded seriously. Yes, Naruto, the scroll is yours if you can convince them to accept you. We've got a situation, a voice interrupted. Hiruzen turned down the hallway to face his old pupil. Jiraiya, you're back already. The Sanin's expression was grim, far more serious than usual. The Hokage took note and resumed walking toward the office he hadn't stepped foot in for over a month. Something major was happening. As they entered, a clone behind the desk dispersed, replaced by an older woman who stood to greet them. Jiraiya quietly closed the door behind him and leaned against it. Are we secure? Yes, the elder woman confirmed, glancing between them. What's going on? Apparently something extremely concerning, Sarutobi replied. Jiraiya, you remember when I told you I'd be looking into Uchiha Itachi? The two elders nodded. Then I sent a follow-up report hinting at a potential link between him and Orochimaru. Yes, Hiruzen's tone shifted, now sharper, more alert. What did you find? That link is real and worse than we feared, Jiraiya answered. Turns out, before Orochimaru established the Sound Village, he and Itachi were affiliated with a shadow organization. A very elite and dangerous one. What sort of group? One you don't want to cross unless absolutely necessary. It's a gathering of 10 missing nin, each of them S-class, wanted for heinous crimes across the nations. He paused. The kind of people nightmares are made of. Koharu's brow furrowed. Do you know what their objectives are? Unfortunately, yes, Jiraiya said with a sigh. They're targeting Jinchuriki, hunting them systematically. He glanced at the window, then at the stone faces carved into the mountain. Naruto is in danger. The Hokage inhaled deeply in shock, the expression on his face reflected in Koharu's. Do we know why? Not exactly, but it's definitely not good. From what my informant said, Orochimaru went rogue after he tried to steal Itachi's eyes. Itachi crushed him and cast him out. Do you have any leads on the others involved? No names. The group called Akatsuki is extremely secretive. I had to protect my informant after he passed this along, but he did leave me one chilling piece of information. Which is? Jiraiya took a moment. You remember the civil war in Kirigakure? Who could forget, Koharu said. The bloodline purges. It seems the Akatsuki might have orchestrated that from the shadows. Supposedly, the previous Mizukage was the Sanbai's host, and he'd been under a genjutsu from someone in a black cloak with red clouds. The room fell silent. Hiruzen lowered himself into his seat, resting his chin on folded hands, lost in heavy thought. Another storm was approaching Konoha. Naruto needs to know, he finally said. What? Koharu blinked in disbelief. He has to be warned, the Hokage repeated, locking eyes with her. If they're after Jinchuriki, he needs to be ready. That may be too much pressure for him. I think he deserves the truth, Jiraiya interjected. Better he finds out from us than by being blindsided. He'll be more prepared this way and it'll strengthen his trust in the village. Koharu nodded slowly. Very well. You tell him, Jiraiya, Hiruzen instructed. I plan to. There's only 2 days left before the finals anyway. Meanwhile, we'll begin drawing up defenses, Sarutobi added. You're expecting an attack. Not necessarily, but with Orochimaru you never assume anything. He didn't resurface just to mark Sasuke. There's more at play here. Ask yourself, why Sasuke of all remaining Uchiha? Because of his skills? No, I believe it's more straightforward than that. Revenge, Koharu murmured. Sasuke is driven by it. Of all the survivors, he's the most emotionally unstable. He'd be the easiest to manipulate with promises of power. Which is exactly why we must keep close tabs on him, Sarutobi nodded. Especially now that Naruto's improving rapidly, it might provoke Sasuke into rash action. Naruto needed the training anyway, Jiraiya added. This only makes it more urgent. Hiruzen, Koharu asked curiously, do you really believe Naruto's come this far? Stronger than Sasuke. Hard to say without knowing how far Kakashi's taken him, but Naruto's growth has been remarkable. His grasp of concepts is sharper when explained the right way, and physically he's always had potential. And the fox? Sealed off, Jiraiya said. I restricted the Kyuubi's influence before training started, wanted him to rely on his own strength first. We began elemental manipulation, and midway, his bloodline trait resurfaced. Elemental manipulation. For a genin, I wasn't expecting mastery, Jiraiya shrugged, but enough control to support more advanced techniques. With his chakra, he can use wind-style techniques for area control. Great counter to close-range fighters like that Hyuga boy. We built on that, Hiruzen continued. He's progressing well with wind and earth styles. He's far beyond genin level already. Thanks to his shadow clone mastery, he trains faster than anyone. Add in his Keke Toda, Taijutsu refinements, speed drills, and of course, he trailed off. Summoning, Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. I hoped he'd sign the Toad contract. No, Hiruzen interrupted, shaking his head. He refused, so I offered him an alternative. You remember the old scroll we discovered as a young team, Koharu? She scowled. Those wild, violent creatures actually accepted him. The Hokage gave a slow nod. Surprisingly, yes, I was skeptical at first and insisted on staying close for security. But in the end, it seems he earned their respect. So we can assume he's ready for the exam. Absolutely. That means, at least for now, he's one less issue on our list. With that said, we need to act quickly. Jiraiya, I'm counting on you to watch over Naruto from this point forward. Make sure he's ready for the Akatsuki threat. You got it, Jiraiya replied with a firm nod. And about Orochimaru, leave that to us, Hiruzen interrupted. If anything happens, I just ask that you defend the village and its people if I'm otherwise occupied. You sure I could? No. Just follow my request. He offered a small smile. I don't want to burden you more than necessary. Though visibly concerned, the Sannin gave in and turned toward the door. Fine. I'll go check on the kid before the exams start. Very well, take care, Jiraiya. Later, Sensei. Only after his former student had left did the Hokage turn to the room's other occupant. Now then. I'll need you and Hamura. Stage 2, a shift in perspective excitement buzzed through the air as Konoha came alive with anticipation. People from every corner had journeyed to the village hidden in the leaves for this very day, the final round of the Chunin exams. Throughout the village, a festival had broken out. Crowds gathered in the thousands, filling the streets. Wagers were placed, and nobility from various regions arrived en masse to enjoy the entertainment and scout the future of the shinobi world. Far removed from the festivities, Naruto sat alone at his usual ramen stall. His gaze drifted from the masses to the warm bowl before him. This was the moment he'd worked so hard to reach. The day everything changed. The day he began forging his legend. Today, he'd make sure everyone remembered his name. And after today, the entire world would. He looked up at the only 2 people in the village who had ever truly shown him kindness. The sight of their ramen shop crowded with customers brought a rare, genuine smile to his face. They had always been good to him, even when it brought them trouble. But things were going to be different now. No point hanging around anymore. These people came to see a show, after all. He raised a hand to get Iam's attention. Thanks for the food, Iam, he said, placing down a stack of ryo that more than covered the bill, along with a slip of paper on top. Odds of 100 to 1, he thought, walking away. That should set them up nicely. With that done, Naruto made his way to the newly constructed Colosseum. The roaring crowd exceeded anything he had imagined. The sheer number of civilians, shinobi, and prospective clients was overwhelming. It was a vast sea of faces and noise. The Hokage had recently explained the true purpose of the exams, to foster unity, yes, but also to serve as a public showcase. Clients judged the abilities of the next generation and used those judgments to decide where to invest their trust and money. A strong performance meant prestige. A poor one could sink an entire village's credibility. Suna had already started to feel the effects of that scrutiny. That was why the Kage's children were even allowed to participate. They were supposed to prove that, despite hardships, the village hidden in the sand still had powerful assets. All three Sand Genin making it to the final round supported that narrative. That is, until they were taken down by the home team. Yo, Naruto, what's with the new outfit? Naruto glanced to his right where Shikamaru stood, eyeing him curiously. The blonde didn't respond. His feelings toward his fellow genin were complicated. They had all known him since their academy days, yet most had done little more than mock or avoid him. It stung to think about. And now they wanted to act like old friends. Without a word, Naruto turned his focus back to the arena ahead. He noticed Sasuke was still absent. That wasn't surprising. If Kakashi had something to do with it, Naruto wouldn't be shocked in the slightest. Those two were made for each other. Shikamaru frowned at the brush-off and gave Naruto a more careful once-over. The blonde now wore baggy black pants with two thin orange stripes down the sides. His forehead protector tied around his waist like a belt. Ninja tool pouches were strapped to each leg, one for kunai, the other for shuriken. Over a short-sleeved orange shirt, he wore a zipped-up black vest, and his arms were wrapped in bandages all the way to his fingertips, where fingerless gloves with metal plating rested. His hair had grown slightly longer, and his bangs now partially covered his eyes. Over it all, he wore a bright orange cloak. Despite the color, he actually looked like a shinobi now. Still, if Naruto thought a new wardrobe would help him beat the Hyuga prodigy, he was in for a harsh wake-up call. Maybe a solid punch to the face will finally knock some humility into him, Shikamaru mused. Doubt it, though. All contestants except Uzumaki, Naruto, and Hyuga Neji clear the stage, the proctor announced. Naruto noted it was a different examiner than before but didn't dwell on it. Follow me, Uzumaki. He trailed behind the proctor until they reached a good distance from his opponent. The two genin faced each other while the crowd erupted with anticipation. Ninja fights always drew the biggest cheers. Neji gave his usual smug grin, eyes scanning Naruto. You can back down now and save yourself the embarrassment. Naruto started to reply, then caught himself. The Hokage had warned him, don't let opponents get in your head. If he reacted emotionally, he'd already lost the mental game. He said nothing. The lack of reaction didn't faze Neji. If anything, it made his smirk widen. Good. That confidence will make breaking you that much more satisfying. Again, silence. The tension between them was thick enough to cut. The proctor chewed lazily on a senbon, eyes flicking between the confident favorite and the so-called underdog. For all the predictions, something told him this fight would be remembered. He raised his hand high. Are you both ready? Neji nodded. Naruto nodded. The hand dropped. Begin. The first thing Neji noticed, Naruto had gotten faster. The moment the proctor's hand moved, Naruto was already in motion. A quick leap back increased the space between them, followed by a flick of the wrist that sent 5 shuriken flying. A second later, his hands blurred into a seal. 5 shuriken became 50. Neji's Byakugan flared to life, veins pulsing at his temples. His enhanced vision caught the faint gleam of paper tags trailing each projectile. Explosive tags? Seriously. Left with little choice, Neji activated his family's signature defense. Chitin, he shouted. The blonde's eyes narrowed in surprise as a dense barrier of pure chakra formed around his opponent. His projectiles detonated on impact, igniting a blaze so fierce it singed his skin even from a distance. Without hesitation, the young shinobi moved into his next attack. After forming a cross-shaped hand sign, 2 shadowy replicas emerged beside him and immediately sprinted toward the fading smoke cloud. 2 thrown shurikens sliced them apart mid-charge as the Hyuga genin burst forth from the wreckage. He dashed across the ground with impressive speed, clearly aiming to close the distance and engage in hand-to-hand combat. His sandals skidded against the terrain, flinging up dust and gravel as he slid into place. In front of him, the blonde genin's hands moved at blinding speed through a series of hand signs. Sutin, Mizurappa, water style, violent water wave. The Hyuga twisted sharply to the right, avoiding the powerful torrent of water that tore through the space between them. Regaining his stance, he squared up just in time to spot a flash of orange rushing into his vision. The older genin struck out with a chakra-infused palm, but connected with nothing but air as his opponent flickered out of range. Gritting his teeth, the Hyuga spun and launched a backward kick, only for the blonde to parry it with a palm strike as he twisted away. Using the force of the block, the Hyuga pivoted and counterattacked with a front kick, which the blonde blocked with a raised knee. Undeterred, the older genin followed up with twin palm strikes aimed at the chest, but his adversary deflected them at the forearms. The blonde dropped his knee and leaned forward, slipping past the guard, prompting the Hyuga to retreat instinctively. He barely managed to leap over the low sweep his foe had baited him into. Planting his hands on the ground, the blonde launched himself upward and twisted, delivering a spinning kick that halted the Hyuga's advance. Then, focusing chakra into his limbs, he burst sideways into a roll, regaining his footing quickly to intercept a new blow. Blocking it with his right arm, he retaliated with a front kick, which the Hyuga sidestepped before aiming a pinpoint jab with 2 fingers. The two genin became a blur of movement, exchanging rapid strikes, blocks, and feints as they battled fiercely. The crowd roared in excitement, drawn in by the raw intensity of what was expected to be a one-sided bout. To most, it was an explosive clash, but to the seasoned ninja watching from above, it was something more. They saw 2 young warriors whose close combat skills far surpassed the average for their age, proof of potential greatness. It was a glimpse into the future of the shinobi world. "That can't be Naruto," Yamanaka Ino gasped, gripping the railing as she stared at the arena below. "There's no way that's him." Beside her, Sakura Haruno stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. Try as she might, she couldn't deny it. Despite everything she thought she knew, that was Naruto down there. "Say it isn't him," Ino shouted again, shaking her head. "He was never like this." "It's him," Kiba muttered, his voice unusually serious. Akamaru curled quietly in his lap, both of them watching intently. No one else would wear that much orange. "But how?" Ino asked, eyes wild. "How the hell did Naruto get so strong?" Kiba shrugged. "I dunno, maybe he trained. I know if people counted me out and I had time to prove them wrong, I'd work myself half to death." The words stung, but they rang true. What kind of training turns someone like him into this? Sakura wondered as she watched her teammate go blow for blow with one of the most talented genin in the village. Naruto, the hyperactive knucklehead, was matching the previous year's top rookie, a Hyuga no less, strike for strike. A Hyuga known for being the best of his generation. How was this possible? Down in the arena, Neji felt the window of opportunity open. A feint drew the blonde's guard wide. With a calculated step, the Hyuga batted the arm away and slipped in, landing 3 precise strikes followed by a powerful palm thrust that sent the younger genin stumbling backward. Wasting no time, Neji lunged and delivered a high side kick that sent his opponent crashing to the ground. The blonde tumbled and flipped, landing in a heap. Neji's confident smirk returned as he closed in to finish the fight, only to halt mid-step. A puff of smoke exploded, revealing nothing but a fading clone. The real Naruto burst out of the earth like a missile, aiming a vicious uppercut. Neji barely dodged, the strike grazing his chin. Off balance, he couldn't avoid the follow-up, a brutal kick to the gut that sent him flying. Air fled his lungs as he slammed onto the ground. He rolled instinctively, dodging a crushing knee just in time. Twisting, he launched a low kick that caught the blonde in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Naruto hit the ground with a grunt, rolled, and sprang to his feet. Neji was on him instantly, forcing Naruto to retreat under a hail of strikes. With little room to maneuver, the blonde twisted aside, taking 2 blows to the shoulder before hopping away and hurling 3 shuriken to cover his escape. Neji dodged, then froze. Ahead of him, Naruto crouched low with a hand on the ground, eyes locked onto him. For nearly 10 seconds, they stood still. Then the blonde spoke, voice steady but sharp. "Before we go on, I need to ask, what the hell is your problem?" Neji blinked, eyes narrowing. The veins around his Byakugan flared. "My problem?" His voice was cold. "You want to know why?" Naruto scowled. "Damn right I do. Why'd you act like that earlier? What Hinata ever do to you?" "Hyuga Hinata is a disgrace." Neji's voice was devoid of emotion. "Our forebears would weep at the idea of her leading our clan." "A disgrace?" Naruto echoed. Neji straightened and crossed his arms. "She was born to lead, yet she's a failure. She can't bring herself to fight. She's timid. She lacks the resolve to strike down our enemies." Naruto's mind flashed back to the land of waves, to a kind soul who died protecting his dream. Not everyone was built for this life, but that didn't mean they should be denied their path. This was the kind of thinking Naruto hated most. The Hyuga are proud, Neji continued. Our bloodline stretches back beyond the era of shinobi. We're warriors, always have been, and the heir to our clan can't even defeat her younger sister. It's shameful. And that gives you the right to crush her dreams, Naruto snapped. The crowd murmured restlessly above them. Dreams, Neji scoffed. She dreams of peace, of unity. She thinks everyone can live in harmony. That's not a dream, that's a fantasy. There's too much hate in this world. Even here, old grudges never die. She's blind to reality. She refuses to see it. He chuckled bitterly. She lives in a world that doesn't exist. He inhaled deeply and shut his eyes, working to keep his temper in check. My reason. It's personal. A grudge not just against my younger cousin, but the entire main house. I was never granted the freedom to choose my own path. My future was decided the moment I was born. The blonde frowned slightly in confusion. Your future was already set. Exactly, Neji said, reopening his eyes. And not just mine, every member of the branch family shares the same fate. We live and die under the control of the main house because of the cursed seal etched onto our foreheads. His hand rose slowly toward his brow. Naruto stayed silent as the older genin reached back and untied his headband. His gaze was instantly drawn to the pattern engraved on Neji's forehead. He'd heard whispers of this from the Hokage, rumors about the Hyuga's cruel internal hierarchy, and the seal used to control the branch family. This symbol marks me for life. My destiny is to remain a servant to the main house, just like every branch member before me. His features twisted with resentment. Like my father. Naruto lifted an eyebrow as the real reason behind Neji's fury began to surface. Your father? Yes, my father was killed to protect the main family. He was forced to give his life for something he didn't do. Neji took another breath, steadying himself before continuing. Years ago, when I was still a child, Konoha hosted a diplomatic event aimed at celebrating peace. The guest of honor was a shinobi from Kumigakure. Naruto recalled that festival. He hadn't been allowed to attend. It was considered too risky due to public sentiment toward him, but he did remember the Hokage being too preoccupied to see him that day. It was a deception, Neji said bitterly. Kumo used the event as a smokescreen to stage a kidnapping. The target, Lady Hinata. The abduction failed, and the kidnapper was intercepted by our clan's head, Hinata's father. But rather than capturing the man, he let his emotions take over and killed him. That mistake nearly sparked a war. Naruto could already sense where this story was heading, and he didn't like it. Neji's resentment wasn't baseless. Kumo denied any wrongdoing and demanded justice. They wanted blood in return. Since the clan head was the one who had acted rashly, he should have faced the consequences. But instead of paying for his actions, the main house offered a substitute, his twin brother. My father. Neji's words were sharp with rage, and Naruto couldn't blame him. Because Hayashi-sama couldn't restrain himself, my father paid the ultimate price. I despise it, but I also understand it. Neji's fists clenched. But what I can't accept is watching my cousin, so weak, so unworthy, fail time and time again. It makes it feel like your father's death meant nothing, Naruto said quietly. Neji heard him. He shook his head slowly, long hair swaying with emotion. Worse. I've trained endlessly, trying to become someone my father would be proud of. Despite the main family keeping secrets from us, I taught myself advanced techniques like the heavenly rotation. I've tackled every trial thrown at me, but no matter what I do, I'm never acknowledged. He's beyond mad, Naruto thought. He's filled with hate, and honestly, I get it. Once, he might have cut in, accused Neji of being narrow-minded or arrogant. He might have shouted that fate could be beaten, that hard work always prevailed. He'd have made promises about becoming Hokage and freeing the branch family from their suffering. Now he didn't feel like saying any of that. I'm not even sure if the clan head regrets what happened, Neji went on, retightening his headband. I used to think he did, that he carried guilt, but I doubt we'll ever know. All I do know is that I'm forced to watch the person my father died for fail again and again. He finished adjusting his headband and sank back into his stance. That's what drives me. What's happening down there? Sakura thought, shifting on the bench to make space for someone joining their group. She blinked in surprise when Rock Lee slowly made his way down the stairs and asked to sit. Just seeing him move at all was astonishing, given the injuries he'd suffered. The sheer determination required to be present was nothing short of incredible, and Sakura understood why this match mattered to him so much. Excuse me, the brunette who had helped him down asked politely. Can you tell us what's happening? Sakura couldn't recall her name, but she recognized her as Lee and Neji's teammate. Before she could respond, The blonde next to her leaned forward excitedly and launched into a play-by-play. Sakura frowned and shifted her head aside to dodge a stray gesture. It was strange, honestly. 1 minute, the two were locked in a fierce taijutsu exchange. Now they were having an actual conversation. That wasn't Naruto's style. He usually charged in without a second thought. But then again, he was acting very differently today. And then they pulled apart before Ino trailed off, looking confused. Before they started talking, the disbelieving look on the brunette's face was understandable. I see, she said, clearly not convinced. Lee, however, smiled brightly as he gazed down at the arena. I knew Naruto-kun could do it. Even if it meant cheering against his own squadmate, this moment meant more than team loyalty. If anyone embodies hard work, it's him. His teammate gave him a sidelong glance, opening her mouth to respond, only to be cut off by the boy at the far end of the row. They're moving again. Naruto rolled his neck with a soft crack and gave a nod. All right, I respect that. I just wanted to understand. Neji said nothing, staring at him with his intense gaze. Naruto didn't mind. He exhaled, sensing that their brief pause was over. He had his answers. Now it was time to conclude the fight. Let's do this. Bringing his hands together, Naruto performed a series of hand signs. Chakra surged to his feet as he launched himself forward with explosive force. Neji didn't budge. Instead, he anchored his stance, flooded his right arm with chakra, and took in a breath. Lowering his hips, he stepped in hard with his left foot and lashed out with a powerful thrust of his right arm, ready to reveal one of his newest techniques. Hakushu. 8 divination sign air palm. Naruto's eyes widened as the surge of chakra rushed toward him, closing the distance too fast for him to evade. But just as panic threatened to take over, an idea sparked. Without hesitation, a sealless shadow clone appeared beside him, and before he could be hit, the clone grabbed him by the shoulders and threw him to the side with all its strength. The wave of chakra obliterated the clone, and Naruto winced as its fading memories surged into his mind. He quickly regained control and landed in a low crouch. He barely had time to react before the Hyuga genius appeared before him, his movements swift as he closed the distance with a burst of shunshin. The confident smirk returned to Neji's face as he spread his arms wide, crouching slightly. You're within my divination's reach, Neji declared, his Byakugan flaring as it scanned Naruto's tenketsu, his fingers extending from each hand. Damn it. Hak Rokujuyanshu. 8 divination sign 64 palms, 2, Neji shouted, and his fingers slammed into Naruto's body. 4, Naruto hissed as the barrage intensified. 8, 16, Neji's hands blurred as he quickly shifted to strike different points on Naruto's body. 32, by now, a realization started to settle in Neji's mind and his eyes narrowed. 64, Neji pressed on, his arms blurring with incredible speed. His palms slammed into the designated tenketsu, but then a sharp pain shot back into his own arms, catching him off guard. As his attack concluded, Neji's Byakugan revealed the truth. None of the tenketsu had been sealed. He finished by slamming his palm into Naruto's chest, intending to launch him away. However, the moment his palm made contact, he realized with shock that he had been hitting something far harder than anticipated. His gaze shifted up, locking with Naruto's eyes. Now Naruto wore a sly smirk. You're within range of a serious beatdown. The next moments were unlike anything Neji had ever experienced. Naruto clasped his hands together in a quick seal, and to Neji's surprise, dark markings spread across his skin before vanishing entirely. Neji instinctively stepped back, trying to assess what had just happened, but before he could make sense of it, Naruto disappeared. A second later, Neji felt the impact of Naruto's fist. It was fast and incredibly strong, far more powerful than anything Neji had ever encountered. Neji deflected the first strike, but there was no time to react to the follow-up knee that struck his side. Pain flared through him, and before he could recover, another punch hammered into the opposite side. Neji's training kicked in as he tried to escape, but no matter what he did, Naruto was there. Each strike was faster and more precise. Another punch to the stomach followed by a snap kick to the same side staggered him back, and Neji performed his own body flicker to create some distance. Or so he thought. Naruto remained kneeling, but as his hands blurred through seals, Neji's focus sharpened, realizing something worse was about to happen. Daten Doryu Heki. Earth release. Earth-style wall. Neji barely saw the massive wall rise behind him, and in his attempt to escape, he almost slammed into it. The chakra he had expelled to shunshin backwards slammed into his body, and he staggered as pain shot through him. Naruto was on him before he could recover, his speed almost incomprehensible. 3 shadow clones appeared, closing the gap with terrifying swiftness. Neji tried to react, his palm lashing out in a desperate attempt to stop them, but it was futile. The first clone slapped his arm aside before flipping over him, landing to deliver a kick to his back that sent him sprawling. The second clone pinned him, and the third immobilized his other arm. Neji struggled, but it was no use. The clones each drew kunai, pressing the sharp edges to his throat. The older genin let out a breath of resignation as he deactivated his Byakugan, his head falling in defeat. He had lost. In the academy, Naruto's voice echoed, the clone jutsu was my weakest. I failed 3 times, couldn't even get it right. But instead of letting it decide my worth, I kept working until it became one of my strongest techniques. He grinned. Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do. Naruto glanced at the proctor standing off to the side, the man still in stunned silence. With a single arm raised, the proctor shouted to the crowd, his voice filled with disbelief. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. The roar of the crowd was overwhelming, far sweeter than any ramen. He did it, Yamanaka Ino exclaimed, shock evident on her face. That idiot actually won. Haruno Sakura sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Her eyes were locked on the battlefield, unable to tear herself away from the image of Naruto walking over to reclaim his jacket. A medic was carting Neji off, and the crowd around them was erupting in cheers. Naruto, he won. The teammate she'd always considered a joke, the one everyone had underestimated, had just won. Of course, that's what he did. Naruto had a habit of defying expectations. He took on challenges others wouldn't dare, and found a way to win where no one thought he could. A smile slowly spread across her face as the reality of it sank in. He won. And that was more than enough for her. Way to go, Naruto. A deep sigh escaped Naruto's chapped lips as the loud orange cloak draped over his arm fell to the stone floor with a soft thud. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply to calm his racing heart, before slumping against the wall and tilting his head back. The coolness of the stone felt like a welcome relief against the sun's burning heat on his neck. Quite the impressive performance out there, kid. Naruto smirked, his eyes still closed, as he rolled his head slightly, resting his cheek against the concrete as he faced the man. Jiraiya descended the steps, slowly making his way toward the boy, an almost surprised gleam in his eyes. I had no idea someone could learn so many techniques so quickly. Only a month and a half, huh? Naruto gave a casual shrug before he adjusted himself, leaning back against the wall properly. We had some help. Jiraiya halted 3 steps from him, a confused frown crossing his face as he studied the genin. Help, what do you mean? My seals. Growth stimulants, Naruto replied with a sigh, stretching his arms overhead. Proteins and the like. I also used my chakra to rebuild my muscles every night to recover faster from physical exertion. It worked as a counter to your seals, which helped a lot. He grinned. We didn't figure it out at first, but someone noticed my muscle growth was speeding up and I was always ready for the next session, so we put it all together. The Kyuubi, Jiraiya nodded, still clearly impressed but confused. Isn't that a bit risky though? The Sannin asked. You're draining your chakra with my seals, then doing it again with the recovery, pushing yourself too far every day. If I were normal, yeah, Naruto replied. But I'm far from that. Besides, I sleep pretty soundly at night. Still, with how limited your access to the Kyuubi's chakra is right now. Don't worry, Naruto reassured him. That was just a one-off because of the time crunch. I won't need it anymore. From now on, it'll be all my own power. Jiraiya seemed to relax at that. Good to hear, and the ninjutsu, shadow clones, Naruto explained. That took up most of my chakra each day, to be honest. About 20 clones working on 2 different techniques. They're still nowhere near perfect, but I'm ahead of most kids my age. I got a good grasp on chakra element manipulation, which helped with learning ninjutsu. After that, it was just practice to get it battle ready. The rest of my time away from you was spent refining my taijutsu and learning how to deal with faster opponents. Your seal work helped me with keeping up physically, and it improved my speed and strength. All of that and the summoning technique, Jiraiya asked. Naruto opened his eyes at that, turning his head to look at Jiraiya, his eyebrow raised. You knew about that? Of course, Jiraiya grinned, trying to keep it a secret. I was, Naruto admitted. After all, it was you who said I should keep a few things under wraps. Yep, that's right. A famous ninja is a dead ninja. People will find ways to counter your techniques, like that Hyuga kid did with your shadow clones. By the way, nice job keeping the seals off. Most jounin can't even pull that off. You've made some real progress despite taking a few shortcuts. What can I say? I had great teachers. Naturally, Jiraiya agreed, puffing his chest. That reminds me, I'll be taking over your training after the tournament. Official transfer from Team 7 to me. Good, I was going to ask anyway. Naruto shook his head. Can't deal with the drama holding me back anymore. Did you hear all that noise out there? He motioned to the rowdy crowd. What are the odds his match will get postponed just for him? Of course, the people get what they want, fair or not. Everyone's here to see the last Uchiha, especially the Kazekage. He paused, glancing down the hallway toward the thin strip of sunlight from the outside. Speaking of which, Sensei told me to warn you to keep an eye out for anything suspicious regarding the Sand Ninja. Naruto frowned and straightened up from the wall. He did, is something going to happen? Jiraiya shrugged. Not sure, but I know he has Anbu and Jounin on high alert. You're the only one under Chunin he wants in on this. Just be ready and stick close to the arena. Naruto blinked in surprise, feeling a little honored. Got it. Does he think something's going to happen? Can't say for sure. But he did specifically tell you to watch out for the Sand Jinchuriki. Jiraiya paused, looking thoughtful for a moment. By the way, how's your Kekkei Genkai training coming along? Have you worked on what I mentioned before? Naruto frowned but nodded. I managed to practice a bit before turning in for the night. How far along are you? Jiraiya asked seriously, his tone shifting. I've got that kunai and shuriken trick down well enough, but I need something to work with, Naruto replied. I can probably create a defensive wall jutsu if necessary. And I've got one technique that supplements my taijutsu and defense. He grinned. You should have seen the look on his face when he realized he couldn't break through. I shattered his defense with a pure chakra strike, but it was enough to keep me safe. How about altering physical matter? Jiraiya asked, his tone more insistent. I've worked with water, Naruto answered. I can do it, but I'd rather not have to, but if it's urgent I'm sure I can manage. He grinned again. I work well under pressure. That's been clear, Jiraiya grinned back, the tension lifting. He sighed, anyway I've got something to check on, just remember to be ready for anything. Naruto waved as Jiraiya turned to leave. I'll be ready, what about you? Don't worry about me. Just stay alert. Jiraiya called over his shoulder. Naruto grabbed his cloak, shaking his head. Right, be ready, for what though? Uzumaki, he began with a faint smile, surprised by the lack of enthusiasm in his own tone. How have you been? Great, please have a seat. Her relief was palpable, far more than he had anticipated. He raised an eyebrow at her reaction, but moved to sit on the farthest seat in the row, his gaze drifting to the field below where the examiner was announcing the changes in the schedule. Just as I thought, more bias. So, Sasuke hasn't shown up yet, he asked casually. Not that I'm shocked. Sakura's initial excitement began to wane at his words, though she could only shake her head in disappointment. No, she replied simply. Naruto turned back to her, noting her clear displeasure but not apologizing for bringing it up. Instead, he focused on the other familiar faces around them, Hinata, Kiba, Ino, Lee, the girl he didn't know, and Choji. Shikamaru and Shino were probably in the prep room. It looked like everyone was here, or accounted for anyway. If anything unexpected happened, he'd be prepared. Who's up next? Naruto asked the group, a casual tone to his voice. If they're putting Sasuke's match on hold. Shino's supposed to fight that guy from the sand, Kiba said. But I think he forfeited even before your match. Which means Shikamaru's match is next, right? Against that girl with the dead guy, Naruto mused. A frown creased his face. And if Shikamaru's out too, we're right back to Sasuke versus Gaara. That's about the gist of it, Kiba agreed. Naruto was about to say something else when a voice interrupted. You're correct, a man's voice said from nearby. Naruto turned his head, catching sight of a man about 2 rows above them. His black hair and the faint scar across his left eye marked him as someone worth noticing. His sharp gaze was clearly assessing Naruto, making him feel uneasy. The man's appearance suggested he was a ninja from the village, though his attire gave little away. Everything always seems to come back to Sasuke holding things up, the man continued, eyes briefly scanning the genin before fixing on Naruto. Most unfortunate, but that's not the reason I'm here. He paused, locking eyes with Naruto. Uzumaki-san, I represent my clan and they wish to speak with you. If you'd be so kind, a clan. Recognition flickered in Naruto's mind. The man's features, dark hair, dark eyes reminded him of the Uchiha, a younger one, probably around 20. He had to have been spared by Itachi during the massacre. But why approach him? Despite the rising tension, Naruto stood, adjusting his cloak, and nodded to the man. Lead the way. The Uchiha turned and began walking back up the stairs, and Naruto shot a brief, reassuring glance at his friends before following him. Let's see where this leads. Lord Haruki, the aged samurai acknowledged as he turned toward the daimyo of the Fire Country. The country leader, with his long black hair, watched the scene below, where the crowd outside the press box was growing increasingly restless over the match delays. The Chunin exams had always been among his favorite events, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. That was him, the daimyo said, not phrasing it as a question, but more as a statement. His gaze flicked to the left side of the stands, where Naruto had exited the field, hoping to spot a glimpse of the boy's signature orange. Indeed, sir. The container of the fox demon, Haruki answered, his tone respectful but neutral. Minato's son, the daimyo muttered. He couldn't help but feel a stirring of both pride and sorrow. The boy had been cast aside by the village, a fate that still puzzled him. They all knew the boy lived in Konoha, but why was he kept there, buried under a burden no child should bear? Haruki himself often wondered what that child would have been like, had he been allowed to grow up in a more supportive environment. Yet from what he had seen, Naruto was handling it all remarkably well. Strong, just like his father. He has grown into quite an interesting young man, the daimyo said thoughtfully. There are rumors about his personality, the trouble he causes. Sarutobi assured me some weeks ago that he understands the weight he carries. Tell me, Haruki, how does one stay so cheerful despite everything being stacked against them? Haruki simply shrugged. I don't know, my lord. If it were me, I would have lost my mind long ago. But ninjas are masters of deception. Perhaps it's all a mask, a clever one at that. The daimyo's eyes narrowed as he pondered this, then spoke again, his voice quiet. Do you think he knows about his true heritage? I assume so, Haruki replied. I doubt Sarutobi would keep something like that from him. The real question is how the boy feels about it. The daimyo seemed to agree with that assessment, his thoughts drifting to his nephew, whose blonde hair had passed down to his son. His family's legacy now felt so distant. I need to meet him after the exams, he said with finality. Make it happen, Haruki bowed deeply. Of course, my lord. The luxury boxes in the stadium were a sight to behold, private, secluded, with only a narrow gap between the room and the stands to view the event. Naruto stepped into the room, glancing around at the 3 people present, 2 adults and 1 teen. 2 ANBU guards stood outside, likely there for security purposes. The man who had led him in took a seat by the opening in the wall. Sasuke's here, the man said quietly. Naruto's attention shifted immediately to the woman sitting next to him. She was dressed in an elegant kimono, her dark hair neatly styled in a bun. Despite her calm demeanor, Naruto sensed the nervous energy she exuded. She was the clan leader, no doubt. Sasuke, the true heir, was probably delayed because of his sensei, and this woman would be left to carry the weight of leadership in his absence. So, you're Sasuke's teammate? The woman asked, her voice light, but with an underlying tension. Yes, I am, Naruto replied, trying to focus on her as he avoided the noise of the crowd below. His gaze lingered on her before briefly darting over to the other girl present, another ninja, dressed in the appropriate gear. He's mentioned you before, she continued, her voice softer. He seems to hold you in high regard. This surprised Naruto. Sasuke, thinking of him as a rival, he never imagined Sasuke would see him in that light. Really? He said, blinking in mild disbelief. Yes, she affirmed. He regards you as a measure of his own progress, but now, with everything going on, we need him here. The clan cannot afford to have him absent, especially not in his first Chunin exams. Naruto stood in silence, unsure of how to respond. He understood her point, though. That said, I must admit, I find you intriguing, Uzumaki-san. Sasuke has mentioned you several times, claiming you lack genuine skill despite your obvious potential. And yet, in that match, you showed far more ability than expected. Fascinating, but that's a discussion for another time. I'm sure you'd prefer to be with your remaining teammate, supporting Sasuke in his match right now. The entire crowd outside suddenly gasped in unison. Yes, ma'am, Naruto replied honestly. The whole situation felt tense, and he would have much rather been outside watching Sasuke's match, if nothing else, to gauge his potential opponents for the next round. I suppose I should let you go then, but we will meet again, Genin Uzumaki. Her words were not just a suggestion but a promise. Once again, Naruto chose to remain silent. Go on then. I apologize for taking up your time. Naruto bowed slightly before turning to exit, the ANBU guard holding the door open for him. Once he was at a safe distance, he exhaled deeply. It had been more difficult than he anticipated, but he'd managed it. Still, perhaps it wouldn't hurt to have Jiraiya teach him a bit about politics. He blinked. Feathers? What was with all the feathers? Crap, genjutsu. Sakura, on the other hand, had forgotten just how renowned her Jounin sensei was. The mission to the Wave Village was already over half a year ago, and before that, she had merely seen the masked shinobi as competent, if lazy. Even after the battle at the now legendary bridge, she had once again thought of him as a skilled, albeit lazy, ninja. The awe she once felt had faded, but she was quickly reminded of just who the copy ninja was. The genjutsu lifted, and she shook her head, rising from her seat. The arena was now in chaos as ninjas from both sides clashed among the civilians. Nearby, Ino and Choji were knocked unconscious, and Kiba and Hinata were nowhere in sight, having left the stands minutes earlier. Lee and his teammate were also out cold, and Shikamaru had collapsed on the stairs. Her breath caught as Asuna Chunin appeared before her, kunai already in hand. Kakashi, like a hawk swooping for its prey, moved with incredible speed, far faster than she could react. The Chunin fell to the ground, a slit throat, as Kakashi twirled the kunai between his fingers and looked directly at her with a hard gaze. His expression was a grim reminder of what kind of shinobi he truly was, a killer forged in the fires of war. This isn't chaos to him, she thought, as she took in his calm demeanor. It's just another day. Sakura, where's Naruto? His voice was firm despite the intensity of the situation. She swallowed and forced her focus back to him, trying not to be distracted by the bloodshed around them. I don't know. To her own surprise, she reached down, pulling a kunai from her pouch and holding it steady in her trembling hand. A member of the Uchiha clan came by a few minutes ago, asking about you and Sasuke. That was not the answer Kakashi wanted to hear. His brow furrowed, his expression tightening. Displeasure flashed in his one visible eye. Despite Guy's energetic shouts in the background, Sakura focused on the present. What should she do? An idea hit her, and without thinking, she leaned over and sent chakra into Ino's body. The girl's eyes fluttered open as Sakura moved on to the next. Sakura, Ino muttered, still disoriented. What's going on? Suna and Oto are attacking, Sakura said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. She stood tall, adopting a determined stance. Help me wake the others. Damn it! Kakashi's sharp outburst made Sakura freeze mid-movement. Her eyes darted to where his gaze was focused, the sinking feeling in her stomach deepening as she saw Sasuke rushing toward a trio of sand ninjas through a hole in the arena wall. This is bad, really bad. Sensei, Sakura began, her voice breaking slightly. Where's Sasuke going? To his death. Kakashi replied grimly, tightening his grip on his kunai. Gaara of the Sand is no doubt the mastermind behind this attack. If he regains control, it'll be catastrophic. Sasuke is going into a 3-on-1 situation, and I don't even know if Naruto is dead or alive. He's not dead, Sakura blurted out, surprising herself. As Ino took over the task of waking Choji, Sakura stood tall, her voice steady. I saw him during the exams. Naruto's always been reckless, but he's gotten so much stronger. He beat Neji with only a little trouble. I know he's out there somewhere, fighting. Kakashi seemed to take her words seriously, though the frown on his face deepened. In a flash of hand movements, he pricked his finger and formed a few seals before slamming his hand on the ground. In a puff of smoke, a small dog appeared, wearing a Hit-I-8. It would have been cute under normal circumstances, but now it seemed almost out of place. Yo, Kakashi, the dog said, glancing around. What's with all the fighting? Suna and Oto are attacking, Kakashi said. I need you to take Sakura, Tenten, and Shikamaru after Sasuke. I'll find Naruto and send him after you. Can you do that? The little dog, Pakun, became serious and saluted with a raised paw. Got it. It turned to Sakura and Shikamaru, who was slowly regaining his bearings. Come on, kids. We've got work to do. Unless you want to stay here and get killed, follow me. Sakura and Shikamaru exchanged a glance before nodding. Pakun quickly took the lead, hopping onto the railing and scurrying off, with the two genin following close behind. Kakashi watched them for a moment before turning back to the last remaining genin capable of movement. Let's go, he urged. We need to find Naruto. It felt strange, this calmness. He'd faced overwhelming odds before, always choosing to stand his ground even when fear threatened to overwhelm him. But now, with more seasoned and powerful enemies assaulting the arena, he felt no panic. Instead, an eerie calm took over him. As he dodged kunai and ninjutsu, the words of the late Hokage echoed in his mind. It's not always the fastest or the smartest who wins. In my experience, it's the one with the strongest will and the most experience that triumphs. And when you add a bit of luck into the mix like you. Indeed, it seemed that luck had always favored Naruto, and now, more than ever, his uncanny ability to survive was evident. He might not have fought as many battles as the more seasoned shinobi, but the ones he had fought were often outmatched. Now that he had skill to complement his luck, goddamned brat, he would more than make do. Naruto spun around just as the Suna Chunin descended on him. The man had launched himself into the air, kunai extended, aiming for the throat. To Naruto's eyes, however, the movement was slow as molasses. He had seen the likes of Zabuza Mamachi and Kakashi Haddock battle, witnessed the awe-inspiring speed of Orochimaru as he danced circles around his foes, and experienced the brutal power of Rock Lee when he opened the gates. He'd seen Jiraiya's vast array of ninjutsu and the incredible tactical brilliance of the Professor of Shinobi. Compared to those legendary feats, anyone trying to take him down now was nothing more than an inconvenience, no matter how skilled they were. Naruto stepped forward, grabbing the man's bicep as he fell, turning and launching him over his shoulder. His hands moved in ways never before seen, pulling 2 shuriken from his pouch and sending them flying with pinpoint accuracy. One embedded in the man's head, the other in his chest. The man didn't even have time to land, dead before he hit the ground. Naruto didn't bother to look. This was the 3rd one he had taken out, and it wouldn't be the last. He knew luck had played a role in the fact he hadn't faced any true threats like a Jonin, but he wasn't one to complain. His focus was on survival and doing what he could to help. With the precision of a practiced dance, Naruto shot forward, adrenaline and newfound confidence propelling him through the battlefield. Kunai in each hand, he dipped low past a fallen teammate, already moving on to the next target before he even realized it. His right hand thrust a kunai forward, sinking into the front of the enemy's throat with ease. "Always aim high," Jiraiya's words echoed in his mind. A quick tug freed the blade, and Naruto hopped backward just in time to avoid 3 incoming shuriken. He pivoted his body, bracing for the next assault, a sound ninja rushing at him with a gauntlet-like weapon on his forearm. Naruto had seen this fight before. Without hesitation, he bent his knees and kicked forward with surprising speed, slamming his kunai into the man's ribs before he could even begin to swing. The man crumpled, and Naruto was already on his feet again, moving on to the next opponent. The cycle continued, no flashy jutsu or complicated taijutsu moves, just a steady rhythm of evading, dodging, and striking with deadly precision. He was fluid and relentless. His eyes, narrowing with focus, saw through every strike, every move aimed at him. Some attacks grazed him, one even making him stumble. He didn't let it slow him down. He dashed to the side, dodged another follow-up, and slit his assailant's throat. The bodies piled up. 5, 6, 8, 12. He was a relentless force, and the enemy forces from both sand and sound were starting to realize it. "Hakushu!" The shout rang out. Naruto paused, crouching low and releasing a kunai that embedded itself in the back of one of the enemy's skulls. His eyes flicked to the sides. Neji Hyuga had joined the fight on his left, another Hyuga on his right. They shared a brief glance before Naruto's attention shifted to another fallen enemy, a sand ninja, twitching weakly. "Uzumaki," came Neji's curt greeting as he stepped back. "Hyuga," Naruto returned, acknowledging both the elder and younger ninja. He stood, slipping the last kunai back into his pouch and glancing down at the blood splattered across his hands and cloak. He paid it no mind. Now wasn't the time for disgust. The crowd around them had grown, 7 sand ninja and 4 sound ninja were closing in, seeking revenge for their fallen comrades. The tension was palpable. 3, 2, 1, 0. Katten. Dai Indan, a massive fireball erupted from the air, catching the remaining enemies off guard. It roared past them, consuming everything in its path. Those caught in the blaze were turned to ash in seconds. Naruto's eyes flicked to the left, then to the right. 3 of the Leaf Ninja were watching, stunned. "Yo, Gaki!" The familiar voice cut through the chaos. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as the enormous orange toad landed with a thud. Jiraiya hopped down, a serious expression replacing his usual carefree demeanor. "Come on, kid, we're heading into the village to clean up." Naruto nodded, giving the 2 Hyuga a brief acknowledgement before jumping onto the toad's back. Jiraiya followed, saluting the Hyuga ninja mockingly before the toad leapt off. They were gone in an instant. Meanwhile, Haddock Kakashi scowled as he stepped back to avoid his latest assailant. Behind him, his 2 young students from Team 10 stood, eyes wide and grips tight on their kunai. They watched, sweating, as Kakashi calmly evaded another foe before slipping past their guard with an academy-level bunshin, stabbing his opponent in the spine. That was the 10th enemy in the last 5 minutes. It was becoming frustrating. All around him, battle raged as sound and sand forces clashed with Konoha ninjas. Kakashi noticed with pride that the Konoha forces were holding their ground well, even against the surprise attack. Despite the invaders' numbers, they hadn't gained much ground. Kakashi's thoughts turned to his next move. He needed to get back to the village defense. But at the same time, he had a duty to his students. He had already sent 3 young genin to face forces they couldn't possibly match. There was no time to fix it now. The only hope they had was for the invasion to be repelled before Konoha could focus on the threat of the sand container. But right now, the priority was staying together. Where the hell are you, Naruto? Kakashi thought, scanning the battlefield, searching for the telltale flash of orange. The hardened, ruthless shinobi within him stated with cold pragmatism that his last genin was likely already gone. Genjutsu had never been Naruto's strength, and his first assumption was that the boy had fallen victim to the initial attack. In that grim possibility, his only hope was that someone had taken pity and left him unconscious on the cold stone floor of the arena. However, that idea was swiftly dashed as he assessed the surrounding area. On the other hand, the leaf shinobi in him held a different perspective. He saw the intense emotion in the young Kunoichi's eyes, and a flicker of hope sparked within him. Maybe, just maybe, Ebisu had managed to impart something valuable to his young charge. He knew well enough that his own abilities as a teacher were far from impressive, but someone like Ebisu, though not exceptional, might have been able to reach a boy as unruly as Naruto. Perhaps, despite the odds, Naruto had absorbed enough from the peculiar special Jonin to avoid the opening genjutsu. Maybe he was surviving by relying on his natural resourcefulness, navigating the makeshift battlefield with his wits. It was possible that the young genin had learned to wield his shadow clones effectively, using them to their fullest potential, or at the very least, deploying them as distractions to aid his comrades as he slipped away to safety. That was the thought that kept the veteran Jonin going. And then, something caught his eye, something that could offer a chance. Across a particularly violent section of the battlefield, he spotted a glimmer of hope. Neji Hyuga, the boy who had been assigned to fight the aforementioned genin, was there. Alongside him was the Hyuga clan leader. Kakashi observed as the two worked together in perfect harmony, the elder delivering powerful, crippling blows, and the younger finishing with precise strikes. Kakashi frowned before turning his gaze back to his two young charges, who had calmed considerably over the course of their time in the field. They now looked around at the surrounding chaos with less fear. He wasn't sure what kind of training Asuma had given them, but knowing the man as he did, he wouldn't be surprised if it was more laid back than what Kakashi himself had taught. Asuma, though a skilled shinobi, was naturally lethargic. Each of his students came from prestigious clans, with their own paths to follow. Kakashi could easily see Asuma allowing them to focus on their family techniques while teaching only the bare minimum required. It was a sad realization. Even more so when Kakashi admitted to himself that he had been doing much the same. Note to self, he thought as he refocused on the situation at hand. Once this is over, I'll make sure to work my genin harder. But that could wait. Right now, the priority was navigating this violent expanse while keeping his two less experienced charges safe. It wouldn't be easy, but Kakashi was confident in his ability to get them through in one piece. With that resolve in mind, he pushed his forehead protector aside and activated his Sharingan, scanning the battlefield around them. It would be a difficult task, but fortunately he was the copy ninja for a reason. Taking a deep breath, Kakashi turned back to the young genin trailing behind him. "Listen up," he barked, instantly regretting the force in his voice as both genin flinched. "We're about to head into some heavy fighting, so I need you to follow my orders without question." They both nodded, wide-eyed, staring at his mismatched gaze. Kakashi ignored it as he gestured toward the chaos ahead of them, making sure the area around them remained clear. "We're heading to the front of the shopping district. The Hyuga clan leader is there, and he might need help. Once we secure that area, I'll ask for his assistance in locating Naruto. He should be able to track him down using his Byakugan. But in order for that to work, I need to ensure your safety. You need to stay close to me at all times so I can protect you." "Understood," the two genin nodded in unison, eyes focused on the direction he had pointed to. The Akimichi boy grimaced at the sight, but to Kakashi's surprise, the Yamanaka girl simply took a deep breath and tightened her grip on her kunai. Maybe he had misjudged her as just another fangirl. Perhaps there was more to her than that. "All right, let's go," Kakashi announced as he set off at a brisk pace, with the two genin following closely behind. With luck, the Hyuga clan leader would help find Naruto, and at the very least, he would know whether the boy had fallen in battle. "Go Gaki, go!" Naruto ignored the shout from the white-haired shinobi as he leaped off the back of the toad summon. Midair, he formed 3 hand seals before landing in a roll to the left. He quickly rose to one knee, eyes narrowing as he searched for the source of the shuriken that had narrowly missed him. He turned his palm towards the approaching sound Kunoichi. Futon, Daitapa, wind release, great breakthrough, the blast of chakra-infused wind hit the approaching ninja head-on. To her credit, she was prepared, crossing her arms in front of her face as her chakra anchored her firmly to the ground. But Naruto wasn't done yet. With a burst of speed, he flickered forward and appeared beside her, kicking up dust in his wake. She didn't hesitate. In an instant, she launched a barrage of senbon in his direction. Despite the sharp needles embedding into his skin, Naruto's body continued moving, and he swiftly closed the gap. Before she could react, he drove his knee into her stomach and pulled a blood-stained kunai from his pouch, slamming it into her throat. With his opponent already dying, Naruto leapt away as the Toad Sage landed beside him. He gave a quick glance at the fallen Sound Ninja before meeting Naruto's gaze. Naruto nodded, but he was more focused on the new wounds on his body. Despite the pain, he ripped the needles free, his body now accustomed to such damage. "Are they poisoned?" Jiraiya asked, glancing around for any immediate threats. The sight of the massive toad wreaking havoc on the invaders had undoubtedly kept enemies at bay. Naruto sniffed the tips of the senbon before tossing them aside. "Doesn't smell like anything, just blood," he said, rolling his shoulders to alleviate the discomfort. "Won't slow me down." Jiraiya shook his head. "That's the kind of thinking that'll get you killed, kid," he chided. But to his surprise, Naruto met his gaze without hesitation. "If I die protecting the village, then at least I'll have done something worth it, right?" Naruto said, defiance burning in his eyes. Jiraiya opened his mouth to reply but closed it. Naruto was right. That was the mantra of every Konoha shinobi, no matter how much they hated it. "But even so, Naruto," Jiraiya began, locking eyes with him, "don't ever let anyone tell you you're not a Konoha shinobi. You've more than proven your worth today. No matter what you do with your life after this, be proud of what you've done here. You fought alongside your comrades and risked everything for this village." Naruto was caught off guard by the words. He didn't know how to respond, so he simply stared at the man. That seemed to be enough for Jiraiya, who smiled at him before nodding, as if confirming something he'd been looking for. "I'm heading up to the tower. I'll see if I can do something about that barrier Orochimaru has set up to trap the old man. In the meantime, keep doing what you've been doing. You've proven you can handle yourself." The smile grew wider. "Good luck," Naruto offered a simple "good luck," before Jiraiya vanished with a flicker. Alone once again, Naruto stood there for a moment before glancing at the sounds of distant fighting. With a determined breath, he pulled his cloak tighter around him and set off toward the chaos. Jiraiya was right. He'd more than proven himself today. Now, it was time to make sure everyone knew it. The Odo shinobi hit the ground before he could even scream. Hadake Kakashi watched the body drop in front of him, his expression a mix of disappointment and irritation. The Odo forces were laughable at best. They lacked strategy, and the few tactics they did have were ineffective in real combat. They might have had numbers, but their skill was lacking. They were the perfect example of cannon fodder soldiers. "This reminds me of Orochimaru," he thought as his arm shot out, landing a brutal right jab that crushed an approaching ninja's nose. The battle had already dragged on for over 2 hours, partially due to the presence of the Sand Shinobi. Though they were outnumbered by the Odo forces, the Suna ninja made up for their smaller numbers with superior skill. They were well-organized and efficient, often using debilitating poisons and their natural wind ninjutsu to counter the fire techniques employed by Konoha's forces. In short, a battle that should have been relatively easy had become unexpectedly difficult. Kakashi discarded the latest body as he moved toward his current objective. The two Hyuga clan members had also wrapped up their engagements. The Jounin's mismatched eyes noted the younger of the two, panting and covered in sweat. If the rumors about the exams were true, the fact that this boy could still stand, let alone fight, spoke volumes about his resilience. The way he held his ground despite being exhausted and bruised made it clear why he had earned the title of genius. And Naruto was supposed to have beaten him. The older of the two turned to face him as he approached, accompanied by the two young genin he had been escorting. Compared to his younger counterpart, the Hyuga clan head exuded calmness, even in this chaotic environment. His long hair remained impeccably styled, and the only sign he had been in battle was the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. He moved gracefully around the bodies littering the ground as he met the copy ninja halfway. "Hadake-san," he greeted with a slight nod, before his eyes shifted to the two genin behind him. "And company." "Hyuga-sama," Kakashi responded, bowing slightly in respect. "I come to you for assistance." "I need my Byakugan," the man interrupted. "To find your genin, Uzumaki Naruto." Kakashi frowned, nodding slowly. "You're aware of my request." "It wasn't difficult to figure out," the Hyuga replied. "As a Jounin sensei, your primary concern should be the safety of your students. Honestly, I'd think less of you if you weren't searching for him. And as luck would have it, I did see your genin not too long ago. You did. Kakashi felt a weight lift from his chest. Naruto was alive. Is he all right? The Hyuga snorted. More than all right, he took down several of the enemies in this area himself. Kakashi blinked, momentarily stunned. Naruto had been fighting here, and succeeding. The mere thought was difficult to grasp. Just how much had Abisu really taught him? He helped you? Kakashi asked cautiously. The man nodded. Yes, and he did a decent job of it. You've trained him well. Thank you, Kakashi said, still in shock. Did you see where he went after that? The Hyuga nodded again. Yes, we were about to engage another group when they were all cut down before any of us could react. Then the boy was pulled away and taken to another part of the battlefield. Taken, Kakashi repeated. By who? I believe it was Jiraiya-sama, the Hyuga answered. He's the only one I know who can summon toads. Kakashi stood speechless for the third time in a matter of minutes. Jiraiya, the Sannin was here in the village, and had taken Naruto away. What was going on? They seemed to know each other. Jiraiya called for Uzumaki, and the boy went without hesitation. Then they left with the toad to the east. I believe that's where the majority of the fighting is concentrated. Kakashi forced his jaw shut, nodding slowly. Thank you for your help. He wasn't sure what else to say. It's no trouble, the Hyuga responded, but then his expression shifted slightly. By the way, have you seen Yuhei Kurenai anywhere? Kakashi nodded. Yes, she stayed behind at the arena to protect the civilians. A thought occurred to him. I believe both your daughters were among those being escorted to safety. Something in the Hyuga's eyes shifted, a look Kakashi interpreted as relief. Thank you, Jounin Hatake, the man said, his voice softening in gratitude. No problem, Hyuga-san, I need to go find my genin now. Good luck, the man said, his eyes taking on the telltale bulging veins of his Byakugan. Kakashi said nothing as he turned and headed east without checking if the two genin were following. Jiraiya had taken Naruto away, and they knew each other. Could Abisu not have been the one training his genin after all? Another thought occurred to him. Perhaps Naruto's training had been much different from what he had assumed. He wouldn't get any answers here, though. The best course of action was to get the story straight from Naruto himself. With that in mind, Kakashi leapt onto the rooftops, speeding off toward the heart of the battle. It was time to get to work. With a deep breath, Naruto released a flurry of shuriken, their edges glinting in the air before a single hand seal turned them into a deadly storm. The Konoha shinobi had seen him coming and had moved out of the way long before the shuriken could reach them. In response, the three sand ninjas scattered, with one of the sound shinobi following suit. The last, a sound kunoichi, wasn't so fortunate. Her back was riddled with metal before she even had a chance to comprehend what had happened. A quick flick to the back of her head ensured she was dead before she knew it. The remaining sound ninja turned to face the oncoming assault, his sand comrade not far behind. Naruto locked his focus on the two, rushing forward to meet them. The sand shinobi swiftly overtook his ally, reaching Naruto first. He was tall, with long limbs and a cloth draped over his face. In that instant, Naruto picked up key details about his opponent, insights he never thought he'd gain so quickly. This shinobi preferred taijutsu, using his reach and strength to his advantage. Naruto was more than happy to oblige. With a burst of chakra, a burning sensation spread across his skin as the seals the toad sage had placed on him activated. A sigh of relief slipped from his lips as his muscles relaxed, his chakra coils unwinding deep within. The seal was dangerous, one the sage had warned him could kill if misused, but Naruto trusted the man's guidance. He knew it was designed to push his body to its limits, making chakra flow more difficult, but also stronger. If used incorrectly, it could suffocate or even explode a person. Naruto had taken care to ensure none of those outcomes would happen. With his weight shifting forward, Naruto exploded into motion, nearly doubling his speed. The sand shinobi blinked, momentarily surprised, before his experience forced him to adjust. He crossed his arms defensively as Naruto launched a kick toward his chest. Using the block as leverage, the sand shinobi flipped backward, knocking Naruto off balance. Naruto landed in a crouch, but the sound shinobi was already on the move. Naruto rolled out of the way, narrowly avoiding a barrage of shuriken. He regained his footing quickly and stood firm just in time to face the sand shinobi again. The sand shinobi swung a punch, but Naruto ducked under it and twisted to the side to avoid the follow-up knee strike. Dropping to the ground, he used his hands to support himself as he swept the shinobi's legs, sending him crashing to his knees. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw movement. Instinctively, he dropped forward onto his stomach as a gust of wind sliced through the air. His clothing and back were shredded by the wind jutsu, and Naruto fought to stifle a cry of pain. When the wind finally died down, the sound shinobi, who had been downed earlier, was back on his feet. The sound of a cross seal signaled the creation of a clone, which appeared just as a kunai slammed into his back. Ignoring the pain from his injuries, Naruto created another seal from behind an overturned stall and sank into the earth. With a surge of chakra, he moved through the ground, using vibrations as his guide. Soon he surfaced directly beneath his target, his clone knocking the sound shinobi to the ground just as Naruto broke through the surface. Daten, Shinju Zanshu. Earth release. Double suicide decapitation. Naruto's hands gripped the sound ninja before he even realized what was happening. Another pulse of chakra pulled his target deeper as Naruto surged upward, pulling his feet free as the ninja was buried up to his neck. A swift motion drew a kunai from his pouch, and with a decisive movement, Naruto drove the blade into his opponent's skull. Double suicide, Naruto muttered, jumping back as more shuriken flew toward him. He substituted with his clone just as a second wind jutsu raced toward him. A body flicker later, and he closed the gap between them, flipping through hand seals. Futon, Reposhu. Wind release. Gale wind palm, the twin streams of wind chakra slammed into the sand shinobi, sending him flying backward, his body tumbling end over end. Just as he hit the ground, a stream of fire was carried along by the wind, igniting and expanding into a fiery ball that consumed the shinobi. Naruto ignored the gruesome scene as the smell of burning flesh filled the air, focusing instead on the two remaining leaf ninjas who watched him from a distance. They exchanged a long, calculating look before nodding toward him and disappearing. Naruto lingered for only a second longer, then moved toward the rooftops, only to be hit head-on by a full-powered wind ninjutsu. The blast sent him hurtling through the air, crashing through a window. The pain of glass tearing through his body was immediate, and his vision blurred as he fell to the ground, only coming to a stop when his back hit a wall. A groan escaped his lips as the blood began to pool beneath him. He could feel the pain, but his instincts urged him to move. He couldn't afford to be vulnerable. The sound of cracking glass alerted him to the figure standing in the window frame, a casual stance with one foot still inside. It was the same sound shinobi from earlier, the one who had managed to elude him before. As far as Naruto could tell, the three-leaf shinobi who had come after the man had failed. "Well, looks like I found you, little rat," the man sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "I wasn't sure where you had gone so fast." Naruto slowly pushed himself to his knees, wincing with each movement as he tried to ignore the sharp pain throughout his body. "So you just decided to track me down," he grunted, trying to steady himself. The man smirked. "Right in one, I don't like it when my prey escapes." Naruto forced himself to stand, ignoring the growing pain in his head. He studied his opponent, noticing the familiar attire and hit ate. The day's exhaustion was beginning to settle in, but he knew he wasn't finished. The man stepped fully into the room. "Not really," the man replied, his voice now tinged with malice. "But Lord Orochimaru told us about you. He said you were talentless, a waste of space, but promised that the one who brought him your head would be made one of his greatest jounin." Naruto clenched his teeth. Orochimaru had put a hit on him. That snake really was becoming a bigger problem than he'd thought. Then an idea struck him. "One of his greatest jounin," Naruto repeated, studying the man carefully. He took in his attire and the hit ate again. "Don't tell me that freak is your village leader." The sneer on the man's face grew even more venomous. "Lord Orochimaru is a great and powerful shinobi," he hissed. "You don't even deserve to speak his name with your filthy tongue." Naruto's blood boiled at the words. This guy had caused him so much trouble in such a short time, ever since their encounter during the second part of the exam. But instead of letting his anger take control, Naruto forced himself to focus. The Hokage had taught him the hard way what happened when emotions weren't kept in check: sloppiness. And sloppiness got people killed. "Anger made you sloppy. I don't really care what your pale-faced weirdo is like. He's still a creep," Naruto said with a grin. "And for some reason, he seems really obsessed with attacking little kids. Weird, right?" That seemed to do the trick. The man's face momentarily hardened into a cold mask before he exploded into motion. Naruto barely had time to inhale before the man was already in his face. Eyes wide, the genin tilted his head left to dodge the punch aimed directly at him. Ignoring the fist that smashed into the wall beside him, the blonde quickly raised both palms to slap away the knee that surged toward his side. A rapid left jab to the ribs followed by a right hook to the stomach provided just enough space for him to break free. Another seal later, and a shadow clone stepped forward to engage the opponent, while Naruto distanced himself. 5 seals flashed in succession, before Naruto's body groaned with the strain as he shushed out of the building. The clone dispelled after a particularly brutal bout of taijutsu, and the blonde quickly formed another series of hand seals. He slammed his palms to the ground, summoning a small mound of dirt to create a barrier that deflected a gust of wind. Biting his lip in frustration, he realized the man had been using the technique too rapidly, something he had seen before. He's gotta have those strange pipes in his hands, just like that guy in the exam. Before he could dwell on it further, Naruto's newly honed instincts kicked in, forcing his body to move before his mind could fully process it. A kick aimed for his face was narrowly avoided with a cross block. Using the force from the block, he rolled back to gain some distance and quickly sprang to his feet to continue the taijutsu clash. A punch intended for his face barely missed, but Naruto managed to slap the arm aside. Seizing the brief opening, he darted in, only for the opponent to counter with a swift kick. The blow struck him squarely, sending him sliding back. Clutching his stomach in pain, Naruto grimaced but remembered the danger he was still in. His gaze snapped up, meeting the deranged, victorious grin of his foe. Shit. Zankuha, decapitating air waves. The Sannin had turned well before the Jounin had even covered a full meter of distance. With his sharp eyes, the elder shinobi observed the copy ninja and his entourage. It was obvious the man had been hunting him for a while, and once the realization hit, it became clear why. Jiraiya-sama, the Jounin greeted, locking eyes with the Toad Sage. Hatake, Jiraiya responded with a nod before his gaze shifted to the 2 genin behind him. And company. Sir, Kakashi acknowledged, nodding respectfully as he landed on the same rooftop. Though Jiraiya wasn't his superior, respect was always warranted. I've been searching for you. The sage nodded, crossing his arms. You mean to say you've been searching for Naruto? His eyes narrowed. I can see the concern in your eyes. The Jounin frowned behind his mask. Yes, sir, I was told he might be with you. His mismatched eyes scanned the area for the telltale orange his young student always wore. The Hyuga clan head said you took him. Jiraiya nodded again. I did, and I left him to join the fight here. He was handling himself well. The frown deepened. Sir, with all due respect, was that wise? Jiraiya scoffed. I've known Naruto long enough to know he doesn't always make wise decisions. I found him already deep in this fight. And besides, you don't expect him to just sit on the sidelines, do you? Genin or not, he's a soldier of this village, this country, and in a time like this, we need all the shinobi we can get. I wouldn't call Naruto battle-ready, sir, Kakashi countered. This isn't a good place for him. No place is safe right now, Jiraiya replied calmly. If you hadn't noticed, this is basically a declaration of war. We have to push back this enemy force. Shelters won't help. I didn't send him off to one for a reason. The Jounin's frown shifted to confusion. I'm sorry, Orochimaru, Jiraiya answered flatly. You don't know him like I do. He leaves nothing to chance. The idea that Naruto could turn the tide of this battle alone would be more than enough for him to single out the boy. He purposely avoided looking at the young genin behind Kakashi. Kakashi's expression cleared somewhat. I understand, sir. But still I can't help but think that he's not ready, Jiraiya cut in, his tone rough. I know, but none of us are ever truly ready for combat. Experience comes from living through it. From what I hear, Naruto's already been in more high-level battles than most. There are Chunin out here who have faced less dangerous foes. Hiding him away wouldn't change anything. I know that, sir, Kakashi replied seriously. But if you'd let me finish, I was going to say I didn't think this was the best place for him. He gestured to the area around them. I had the genin group together to stay safe. I was going to send them to meet up with the others. Jiraiya's frown deepened. Send them where? Into the forest surrounding the village, Kakashi explained. Uchiha Sasuke went after Sabuka no Gaara and his siblings. I sent a team to retrieve him, and I intended for them to stick together after that. He went after the sand boy, Jiraiya deadpanned. The unstable Jinchuriki, Kakashi shrugged. No one ever said Sasuke was experienced. I didn't really explain what Gaara was to him, and besides, I think the Proctor Genma ordered Sasuke to pursue them. Damn it, Jiraiya muttered, processing the information. Now that Kakashi had clarified, it made sense. If the boy unleashed the Ikibai, the village would be in serious trouble. They'd need time to seal its power away. Time they didn't have, unless they could delay it. As much as he hated to admit it, protecting the village was a Jinchuriki's duty. And by extension, it was Naruto's duty. It would fall on the boy to at least hold the Suna weapon back. The problem, though, was that Naruto was still cut off from his otherworldly chakra. While he could summon it in an emergency, the amount he could use would be minimal compared to his usual output. At this rate, Naruto would be crushed if he tried to face the Ikibai head-on. Unless. The realization hit Jiraiya with the force of a boulder. Naruto was special, extremely so. Members of the Uzumaki clan had a unique chakra, known for their legendary vitality and stamina. And Naruto's triple nature was even more exceptional. With the power of his Keke Toda, the boy technically had the tools to dominate a battle like this. He was the perfect counter to Gaara's unique sand techniques. But the biggest problem was control. Naruto didn't have the training to use his full potential. Years of practice were required, even with the shadow clone method. They didn't have that kind of time right now. But still. He had once claimed that he thrived under pressure, the sage thought. Let's see if he can prove that now. If that's the case, they'll need more than just sticking together to survive, the man finally responded. I'll see if someone has what it takes to stop it. Kakashi's eyes, each a different shade, widened. Do you think he can do it? It's been so long since I've seen him, I can't be sure what he's capable of now. He deliberately ignored the two genins standing by his side, their expressions filled with curiosity. The Sannin shrugged. I can't say for certain, but he should be able to slow it down enough for me to deal with it properly. In the meantime, you should keep searching for Naruto. Last I heard, he was heading east. He couldn't have gone too far. The Jounin nodded. Thanks, I'll find him and have the genin rendezvous. Good, I'll handle things here, trying to find a way through Orochimaru's barrier, the Sannin added, his face tightening at the thought. It was clear that even he was concerned about that particular issue. Kakashi didn't comment, offering only a mock salute before turning his attention to the genin beside him. The Akimichi boy looked nervous, but was holding it together. All right, team. One last push to find Naruto. He's around here somewhere. Once we find him, we'll split up. You three will head straight for the arena and back through the hole. Pakken should leave a trail for you to follow, Kakashi instructed, his tone steady. Is that clear? The two genin nodded, pulling out kunai. Kakashi briefly smiled at their attempt at bravado. Asuma had apparently taught them well. Never show fear. With a flick of his hands, the group fell in line, and Kakashi led the way, hoping to find Naruto before he had to intervene himself and end this nightmare. As a shinobi of the sound, one got used to strange things. It wasn't a secret that Orochimaru was eccentric. Even those who admired the rogue leaf ninja weren't blind to his twisted ways. Screams of agony were common, and many teams had been sent out to retrieve new test subjects for Orochimaru's experiments. Rumors swirled of failed subjects being used as punishment for failure. Yes, strange things were commonplace in Odo, but that didn't mean the shinobi were always ready for the unexpected. So when the dust and smoke cleared, and the silence settled, the only response the sound shinobi could muster was, "What?" His eyes went wide as his younger opponent lowered his cross guard and met his gaze, now with slightly darker blue eyes. The blonde stood tall, rolling his neck, and the shinobi caught a glint of something in the fading sunlight. Shoten, the blonde answered, his voice soft. Keshu no Yori. Crystal release. Crystal armor, Shoten, the sound shinobi muttered, his voice laced with confusion. I've never heard of such a release. Because it's rare, Naruto replied, shifting his stance as he eased his left leg back, preparing for the next move. I wasn't sure if it would form in time. I've never forced the chakra that quickly before, and to think it held up to your wind technique. I see, the shinobi sneered condescendingly. I'm sure my lord will reward me even more when I bring him your corpse. He enjoys these little tricks. Naruto grunted at the words, but a grin formed as he raised his right arm, preparing for the next attack. If you like that trick, you'll love the next few. The two shinobi blurred into action. By the time the wind technique roared free, Naruto had already blurred into motion, his body flickering as he grabbed the sound shinobi by the arm, using his momentum to spin him around. The shinobi stumbled, caught off guard by the sudden force. Naruto ducked under the remaining wind currents, charging forward with surprising speed. In the blink of an eye, the blonde rammed his shoulder into his opponent's stomach, forcing him to double over. Without hesitation, Naruto grabbed both of the shinobi's shoulders and threw him onto a rising knee. The sound of snapping teeth brought a smirk to Naruto's face as his opponent's head snapped back. Without slowing, Naruto shifted his weight and swept his opponent's legs out from under him. As the shinobi dropped, Naruto dug his crystal-covered right hand into the ground and formed a gleaming crystal with his left. With a single swift movement, he jammed it into the sound shinobi's chest. Kesho kunai, Naruto muttered as the man began to choke on his own blood. Realizing he had punctured a lung, Naruto banished the thought and stood up, glancing back only once before turning to walk away. As he took his fifth step, a prickling sensation ran through his body. His instincts kicked in, and he moved before the flurry of shuriken even hit their target. A quick body flicker carried him to a nearby rooftop, his eyes scanning the area. Where is he? Not to the left, not to the right. Below, the realization came just in time to save his life. As his feet cleared the roof's edge, the entire structure seemed to collapse beneath him. Landing quickly, Naruto turned to see the building crumble to rubble, and through the debris he spotted a figure moving. What the hell? Naruto thought, narrowing his eyes as a man emerged from the wreckage. The man was tall, taller than anyone Naruto had met. He was fit but not overly muscular, with long white hair and piercing green eyes. His clothing resembled loose, flowing garments rather than standard shinobi wear. Clearly, this was no ordinary shinobi. "Are you Uzumaki Naruto?" the man asked, his voice calm and confident, with an unsettling calmness that didn't belong in a battle. Naruto blinked, surprised by the question. "I am," he responded just as confidently. "Can I ask who you are?" The man paused before answering. "I am Kimimaro, a chief general in Lord Orochimaru's army." The words were said without emotion, his tone only adding to Naruto's growing irritation. Naruto muttered, deducing the man's allegiance from his attire. "I'm guessing you're here to kill me." The man tilted his head slightly and nodded. "Indeed." "Yeah, figured as much," Naruto said, standing up on his toes to stretch. His body was sore, his chakra reserves burning, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep fighting. But he didn't care. "That ability is impressive," Kimimaro remarked. "I've seen it only once before. The other user died." "Is that so?" Naruto stalled, his mind already working through the next move. "How long ago was this?" "A few years ago, a servant of my Lord Orochimaru." Naruto frowned. He had been told that it was unlikely anyone else would have his elemental affinity, but this was starting to seem more suspicious. Orochimaru might have known about it. Or maybe Kimimaro was simply informed about his fight in the forest. Either way, it seemed he had been watched. His instincts told him something wasn't right. This man had been following him for a while. The fact that the man had managed to evade detection by both Jiraiya and Naruto himself spoke volumes about his skill. This individual wasn't just claiming to be one of Orochimaru's top operatives for the sake of boasting. He was absolutely serious, and that made it clear that Naruto was at a severe disadvantage. Naruto was confident, but not reckless. He recognized that many of his quick victories had been due to a mix of his own surprising abilities and his opponents underestimating him. Given his age and the lack of a vest, it was clear to those who attacked him that Naruto was just a genin. They assumed they were facing an easy target. That assumption had been their fatal mistake. But this man had studied him. He wouldn't fall victim to surprise. "Well then," the man sighed, his voice calm, "let's get this started." Naruto's newfound reflexes barely kept him alive. With a sharp intake of breath, he rolled with the impact and crashed to the ground. His right hand shot to his forehead as his vision blurred from the blow. He had tried to dodge, but it hadn't worked. The strike had landed squarely on his forehead, and the wetness on his fingertips confirmed that his defensive jutsu had failed to protect him fully. What the hell was that? As his eyes focused again, the scene became clearer. The man hadn't moved from his previous position, but now Naruto noticed a shift in his stance. His right leg was back, and his left hand was aimed directly at the blonde. Naruto had barely seen the movement before it was too late. Looking down, his gaze fell on the ground where something white lay. A small, oval object stained with blood. The recognition hit him like a ton of bricks. "Wait, is that a bone?" Groaning, Naruto slowly rose to his knees. "Did he just shoot a bone at me?" Before he could dwell on it, the calm voice of his opponent reached him. "You should never take your eyes off your opponent." Reacting instinctively, Naruto tried to spring to his feet. In a blur of movement, his body spun to face the threat, but his opponent was already several steps ahead. The backfist aimed for his face was easily avoided with a casual step back, before a brutal kick connected with Naruto's chest, sending him flying back. The wind was knocked out of him, and if it weren't for his crystal armor, Naruto knew he'd have been flattened. Instead, he was sent sprawling backward, skidding along the ground before something in his peripheral vision caught his attention. With all his strength, he managed to roll to the side, narrowly escaping another attack. Rolling back to his stomach, Naruto glanced at his opponent in disbelief. "Are you serious?" he muttered in shock. Sure enough, the man was attacking with bones. One had just narrowly missed his throat. A lethal strike. Naruto gritted his teeth and forced himself back to his feet, his opponent calmly retracting the bone from his forearm, which looked as though it hadn't lost any of its form, like it had simply been duplicated. Shikitsumi Aku, the man stated coolly. Maikeke Genkai, I'm from the Kaguya clan, hailing from the Hidden Mist. With this, we were once the greatest masters of taijutsu. He looked at Naruto with a slight tilt of his head. Before the bloodline purges, I was considered the most talented. All right, Naruto replied, still stunned as his mind raced. He remembered hearing about the Kaguya clan in passing when he once asked the Toad Sage about other bloodlines. That must hurt. The man simply shrugged. You get used to the pain after a while. Naruto shook off the shock and quickly began forming seals. He got as far as the third seal before his opponent was on him again. Dodging a strike, Naruto slammed his hands onto the ground. The earth surged upward in a makeshift shield, forcing the Kaguya shinobi to step back. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, Naruto used a body flicker to leap to a nearby rooftop, watching in horror as his barrier was effortlessly pierced. In most shinobi encounters, fights rarely lasted longer than a couple of minutes. Speed, experience, and surprise were typically the deciding factors. More often than not, the shinobi who had even a slight advantage would win. It was painfully obvious that his opponent had a massive edge in both speed and experience, and his earlier study of Naruto's movements made it clear he wouldn't fall for any tricks. Naruto knew he had mere seconds before his opponent finished him off, but he wasn't about to go down that easily. Taking a deep breath, Naruto centered himself. Every bit of training with the third Hokage flooded his mind. Every battle he'd fought, every hard lesson he'd learned came rushing back. His body ached, his legs screamed, but he was still alive, and that meant there was still hope. A sharp whistle broke his concentration as something flew toward him. Reacting quickly, Naruto ducked just before bone projectiles flew past. He countered with 2 handfuls of shuriken, sending them flying toward his enemy. In a split second, the shuriken multiplied, each one racing toward the Kaguya shinobi. Without waiting to see the result, Naruto quickly formed another seal. As the shuriken rained down, he followed up with a wind technique. Futen, Daitapa, wind release. Great breakthrough. The Kaguya prodigy looked up as the wind accelerated the storm of metal stars toward him. He sighed and body flickered out of the path, moving further down the street. A single ulna bone shot from his arm, piercing through one of the incoming clones. It exploded into a cloud of smoke, but a second clone was already in range, and the Kaguya dodged it effortlessly. He stepped back, surveying the area, before taking a large step to avoid a sudden attack. Naruto had erupted from the ground, aiming for a strike, but the Kaguya shinobi was already moving. A powerful kick struck Naruto square in the chest again, sending him flying backward. As he hit the ground, cracks appeared along his arm before his crystal armor dissolved. The Kaguya shinobi approached the downed genin, raising another bone weapon. Your technique is still in its infancy. You lack control, and against someone of my strength, it's useless. He lifted the bone sword. You're outmatched. Panting, Naruto said nothing in return. He lay on the ground, but for the first time, his opponent's calm demeanor was shaken. 2 sets of hands shot up from the ground, gripping Kimamero's ankles before he could react. He blinked in surprise. Naruto had set a trap. This won't save you, the Kaguya shinobi muttered, raising his sword again. But Naruto, propped up on his elbows, smirked. Yeah, I figured. But you know, one thing an old guy once told me I'm really good at, Naruto said, his grin widening. Sensing. Kimamero frowned, confused, before a terrible screech filled the air. A surge of raw chakra flooded the area, sending a chill down his spine. Something huge was approaching. Hi there, mind stepping away from my genin? A voice called out from behind him. Hadake Kakashi narrowed his eyes at the man across the street. Beneath his mask, the usual lazy expression was replaced by a focused and intense look. He had just missed a strike with his signature technique, a move that should have landed. The opponent had been pinned down by the ankles. That didn't happen. It shouldn't happen. But it did, and his Sharingan had captured the entire sequence like a film on replay. Ignoring the gash bleeding above his right eyebrow, Kakashi glanced down to his side. Rising from the spot where he had been knocked flat on his back was the last, and possibly most elusive, member of his genin team. With practiced precision, Kakashi assessed Uzumaki Naruto, noting the change in his attire and posture. Without a doubt, the genin who had changed the most over the last 2 months now stood before him. It was unsettling, to say the least. Looking back at the man who faced him, Kakashi's thoughts returned to the events that had just unfolded. Clearly, Naruto had anticipated his arrival and set up that clone trap. It should have worked. But something had shifted, something that nearly cost him his life. Still, he was somewhat satisfied to have inflicted a significant wound on the sound ninja. Are you okay? Kakashi asked, his gaze shifting to the blonde beside him. Naruto straightened from his kneeling position, glancing at the other two leaf shinobi who had arrived with Kakashi. Not that he expected them to know much about the situation. As good as I can be, Naruto grumbled, brushing off his clothes and eyeing the other two genin. They looked at him with concern. He didn't understand why. Apart from getting my ass kicked by this guy. The Jounin gave an approving noise as his eyes stayed fixed on the enemy, who stood motionless, his gaze returning to the leaf group. The silence between them was almost suffocating. Kakashi was unnerved by the confidence the enemy showed, arrogance, even, and it was clear that this arrogance wasn't misplaced. What was that? Naruto asked, taking a step closer, his eyes locked on the sound ninja. All that noise and light. I thought you were just gonna slit his throat or something. Kakashi shook his head briefly. That would have been too risky. Getting close enough to use a kunai like that would have put me in a dangerous spot. His jaw clenched at the thought. That was my trump card. A move designed for instant death, one that should have pierced through any defense and obliterated his chest. You've seen it before. Naruto went silent at the mention of the technique. He had indeed seen its brutal results. The memory of the rogue Kiri shinobi they'd encountered flashed before his eyes, the man who had been too kind for his own good. It reminded him of the day when Kakashi had used the same move, effortlessly taking life after life without hesitation. That jutsu was truly devastating. Speaking of which, Kakashi's voice trailed off as he shot another glance at Naruto. What was that little trick you pulled? Naruto didn't hesitate. It's my trump card, he said flatly. A little something I figured out during training. His tone made it clear he wouldn't be elaborating any further. Kakashi almost couldn't believe his ears. His usually talkative and boisterous genin was being reserved. Had Jiraiya really done this? Kakashi pushed the thought aside. Now wasn't the time. So, what's the deal with this guy? Kakashi asked, eyeing the still motionless sound ninja. How did he do that? Nearly took my head off without even moving. Naruto snorted as the other two genin stepped up beside him. It's a Keke Genkai, a lost one, from a clan called Kaguya. Kakashi's eyes widened in realization. A Kaguya? He asked in disbelief. I thought they were all wiped out. Like the Uzumaki, Uchiha, or Yuki, Naruto shot back with a sarcastic drawl. The bone guy was pretty damn proud of his clan name. At that, the first of the other genin finally spoke up. Bone guy, the usually fiery Yamanaka heiress asked, gripping her kunai. Naruto gave a quick glance at her before nodding. The Shiketsumiyaku, Kakashi interjected, corpse bone pulse. That's it, Naruto confirmed, nodding thoughtfully. I couldn't get a hit on him, but I sure felt the one he landed on me. Almost broke me in half. And this guy, he's really good. Said he was one of Orochimaru's best. I don't doubt it. Is that so? Kakashi muttered as the Kaguya finally moved, tilting his head curiously at the leaf team. Naruto continued. Also, the pale guy wants me dead. He stretched his shoulders, trying to loosen the stiffness from the fight. Second one to come after me saying the same thing. Really? Kakashi's voice sharpened with more intensity. His jaw clenched again and something in his chest stirred. Orochimaru's put a target on you, Naruto shrugged, nonchalantly. What can I say? He's scared of awesome, he replied dryly. I'm sure he is, Kakashi muttered, internally seething. He understood the soldier's perspective, but as a teacher and protector of his genin, he was appalled. The idea that someone would actively target one of his students filled him with fury. I'll have a little chat with him once we're done here. The blonde shrugged again. Fine by me. I'm not looking to fight him any more than I already have. Usually, Naruto would have taken up the challenge himself, but not today. He was drained, hungry, and outclassed. Letting Kakashi take over seemed like the smarter choice. Good, Kakashi replied, because you've got another task ahead. Naruto blinked. Excuse me, you'll be going with Ino and Choji, Kakashi continued. Find the rest of the genin, bring Sasuke back. A heavy silence hung in the air. Bring Sasuke back, Naruto repeated flatly. Bring Sasuke back. Yes, Kakashi confirmed. From the forest, he chased after Gaara of the desert. Oh, Naruto's eyes widened in realization. So basically we're all gonna die. Kakashi's eyes turned back to him and the weight of the words sank in. Who told you that? I figured it out, Naruto replied dryly. And you were just gonna send us after him without telling us. I didn't think it would be a big deal, Kakashi tried to explain, but it was clear he wasn't entirely convincing. You're usually up for this kind of thing. I usually have ramen at this time of day, Naruto retorted. But today's not exactly usual, don't you think? The other two genin exchanged confused glances. At any rate, Kakashi continued, as though nothing had happened, stick together. It's safer that way. We can't be there to watch over you the whole time. Naruto scoffed. Apart from the bone guy, I've been surviving just fine. Not sure how teaming up with these guys will help. We don't know each other's strengths all that well. Might just cause more problems. Kakashi shrugged. It's the best we've got in this situation, we have to adapt. If you say so, Naruto muttered, still eyeing the Kaguya ninja. I still don't see how this is going to work. Crap, Kakashi reacted swiftly, moving with a fluidity only a seasoned jounin could possess. In an instant, he had drawn a kunai and spun to dodge a swipe aimed at his neck. Rising effortlessly to his feet, Kakashi parried the sound ninja's bone sword with a clang, then kicked the enemy back with a solid strike to the stomach. The Kaguya grunted, but managed to force his weight forward, bringing another bone weapon into play. But before the Kaguya could act again, Naruto was on him. The sound ninja quickly deflected the kunai Naruto threw, spinning on his foot to face the approaching blonde. This time, Naruto was ready, ducking under a swipe and sliding across the ground, his hands flashing through seals. The wind-based ninjutsu slammed into the Kaguya's stomach with force, knocking him back several feet. He grimaced, feeling the sting of the wind chakra, but his bone armor protected him from the worst of it. He looked down at the damage to his clothing with a sigh of frustration. Kakashi and the two genin stared as Naruto, breathing heavily, returned to his side. The jounin's hand dropped as he gave a sidelong glance at his student. Naruto winced from exhaustion but managed to stay on his feet. Well done, Kakashi started, the surprise evident in his voice. Actually, really well done. The blonde genin grunted before responding. Like I said, afraid of awesome. Kakashi glanced at him one last time before refocusing on the sound shinobi, timing his next move perfectly. His breath caught, and his eyes widened as an unexpected surge of chakra filled the air. The quartet of Leaf Ninja watched as strange symbols began to snake across the Kaguya's body, and with them, his chakra began to swell. Kakashi had seen something similar before, but nothing like this. It was far more refined. What is that? Naruto asked, his skin prickling as the vile chakra seemed to cling to him. His face twisted in distaste, and his fists clenched in discomfort. It felt like something had rotted inside the man. A cursed seal, Kakashi murmured, only loud enough for Naruto's keen ears. Otherwise known as very bad news. Understatement of the century, Naruto thought, watching the symbols spread further across the Kaguya's body. Listen up, the jounin suddenly barked, completely ignoring the surprised expressions of Team 10's genin. You three need to leave. This guy is way beyond your level and I can't protect you while I'm fighting him. Naruto shot him a glance, then nodded. Got it, heading after Sasuke. Good. Now get moving before he strikes again. Without wasting any more time on words, the three genin turned and sped off toward the stadium. Kakashi didn't watch them go. His focus remained entirely on the sound shinobi as he prepared for whatever came next. It didn't take long for that next moment to arrive. With a flicker of movement, the sound shinobi closed the distance between himself and the retreating genin, only to be halted by an arc of pure lightning that struck the ground in front of him. He pivoted instantly to face the approaching Leaf Jounin and swung at him with another swift motion, which Kakashi easily dodged. A series of hand seals, too quick for the sound shinobi to follow, was the only warning before a plume of flame erupted from the Leaf Ninja's direction. The fire consumed the sound shinobi, but he broke free quickly, putting distance between them. Kakashi watched as the flames flickered out to reveal that the damage was minimal at best. Great. One of those kinds of opponents. As the flames cleared, the sound shinobi's earlier calm expression was replaced by frustration. His green eyes glared at Kakashi as he ripped away the remnants of his upper clothing. Haddock Kakashi, the copy ninja, the words hissed out of his mouth like venom. You're in my way. Yeah, not sorry about that, Kakashi responded nonchalantly, twirling a kunai between his fingers. You're attacking my genin after all. The green-eyed glare sharpened further. He must die by Lord Orochimaru's orders. You will not stop me. So you say, Kakashi said, narrowing his own eyes. But seeing as you won't get past me, I beg to differ. The Kaguya clicked his tongue in annoyance. No matter, I'll kill you first, then hunt him down like the trash he is. Sure, Kakashi replied with a roll of his eyes. That's something I'd love to see. And you will, the sound shinobi spat, a vicious grin spreading across his face. After I bring your body to Orochimaru-sama, he'll surely reward me greatly. Are we really just going to leave him there? Naruto took a few seconds longer than he should have to realize the girl had spoken to him. He turned his head slightly, glancing at his two fellow Leaf Genin. A frown spread across his face. Of course, he answered as the group weaved through back alleys, trying to avoid further conflict. Naruto was exhausted and had no energy left to fight while keeping them safe. The girl's face twisted in concern. But that guy was really creepy. Naruto bit back the urge to roll his eyes. He'll be fine. He's a veteran from the last war. By our age, he'd already been a chunin for several years. At 14, he was a jounin leading important missions during wartime. The two genin exchanged looks of disbelief. Really, the shock in their voices was clear. It was hard for them to grasp. They had just traveled with the man, who had barely impressed them, aside from the ninjutsu he'd used against the strange sound ninja. The only other time they'd seen him had been during the chunin exams, where he had merely stood by, reading his unusual literature. Could this guy really be that important? Naruto snorted, unable to stop himself. He graduated from the academy as the Rookie of the Year when he was 6. His classmates were all 10, and they all look up to him for a reason. He's got huge bounties in other major villages, and his nickname is well known. Overall, he's one of the strongest ninja in the village. Plus, he's the last and most prized student of the 4th Hokage. I'd rather have him fighting someone like that than other jounin. He'll be more than fine. The other two genin stared at him, wide-eyed, as they processed everything he'd said. Could this seemingly lazy, indifferent shinobi really be that strong? It was hard for the Akimichi boy to believe. Are you sure you have the right guy? He asked, struggling to keep up with Naruto's brisk pace. Naruto shot a quick glance over his shoulder before shaking his head, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The two others exchanged looks, then fell silent, following the shorter genin. The trio moved through the streets, swift and silent, avoiding any potential enemy encounters. None of them complained. Naruto was too tired to seek out unnecessary fights, and the others weren't sure they could handle it if they had to. Soon, they reached the area of the earlier conflict, and then entered the arena. They dashed through the halls and into the stands. Naruto glanced around cautiously, noting that most of the fighting in this area seemed to be over. Only a few battles still raged, but none of the combatants had branched off toward them. The three-leaf genin leapt onto the arena floor and headed toward the surrounding forest. Naruto kept watch, always alert for any possible hostiles. They moved swiftly through the canopy, searching for any sign of their companions. There, the Akimichi genin suddenly shouted. Naruto turned to look in the indicated direction, spotting the broken branch, which was far too deliberate to have been the result of a past battle. Good eye, Naruto remarked, adjusting his course as the others followed. Soon, the broken branches were replaced by obvious kane slashes. The trio fell silent again, moving in search of their fellow leaf genin. It didn't take long before something else caught Naruto's attention, his sharp eyes narrowing as a foul smell assaulted his nose. Poison. He immediately identified it. There had definitely been a battle here. His suspicion was confirmed moments later, when a gray coat caught his eye. The high collar and long sleeves immediately made him think of one person. The Akimichi boy confirmed his thoughts seconds later. Shino, the large genin shouted as he rushed forward, with his female teammate close behind. Naruto sighed, resisting the urge to facepalm. A few months ago, he would have made the same mistake of rushing in without thinking. But thanks to the Sandaime Hokage's lessons, he knew better now. He took a moment to scan the area for any remaining threats before descending to join them. Before Naruto even reached the down genin, his sharp ears caught the rasping sound of labored breathing. He crouched beside the two others, watching as they gazed down at the usually stoic boy with concern. Shino's skin was pale, and his clothes were damp with sweat. In just a few seconds, Naruto recognized the signs. Shino had been caught in a battle and poisoned. The Aburame boy was twitching intermittently, curling up slightly as his Kakachu beetles scurried around in a panic, lost without their host's guidance. Naruto watched as the two genin from Squad 10 scrambled to assist their fallen teammate. His expression darkened as his mind raced. Although he had never been particularly close to Aburame Shino, the boy had always treated him with a level of respect that others had not. Unlike the majority, Shino had never mocked Naruto or dismissed his dreams. In a village like Konoha, that alone had meant more than the blonde had realized. The subtle indifference shown by Shino had, in its own way, been a relief amidst the endless hatred. But none of that mattered now. He had no clue what kind of poison was coursing through Shino's veins, nor did he know how to find the antidote, if one even existed. What worried him more was the time ticking away. How long would Shino survive before the poison claimed him? Was the poison even lethal? There was no way to know, but you still need to try. A voice inside him urged. Those who abandon their comrades are worse than filth. Reluctantly, Naruto agreed. Despite the bitterness that had taken root in him, he hadn't changed on the inside. He still hated seeing others suffer, especially those from his village. No matter how hard things had been for him, there was no justification in letting someone else pay for an unfortunate circumstance. He had to at least make an effort. Yet, he had been ordered to track down the other genin. What if the one responsible for poisoning Shino had already targeted them as well? Could he really risk saving one life while potentially condemning others? It was a decision he didn't want to make, but one he had to. Suddenly, it all came rushing back. The reason he had pushed himself so hard in training over the last few months. The reason he had driven himself to exhaustion. Becoming a Chunin had been the next step toward proving all of his doubters wrong. Chunin were leaders. They were tasked with making difficult decisions that could mean life or death. If he couldn't handle that responsibility, he had no right to call himself a shinobi. In that moment, a simple question returned to him, one he'd been asking more and more of late. What would Haku do? The answer was clear. Chouji, pick him up, Naruto barked, his voice commanding, more authoritative than he'd ever imagined it could sound. The other two genin stared at him, mouths agape. Naruto clenched his fists, irritation rising as they hesitated. Stop gawking, pick him up, he snapped. The boy beside Chouji quickly obeyed, lifting the unconscious shinobi with surprising care. He draped Shino over his back, gripping his arms to keep him from slipping off. Naruto watched them briefly before turning his attention to the Yamanaka girl. Chouji's going to carry him, which means he won't be able to fight. You'll need to cover for both of them. He spoke quickly, his tone firm. Shino's life is in Chouji's hands now. You're responsible for both of them. If something happens, it's on you. The girl's eyes widened in panic, and she started shaking her head in protest. Naruto cut her off before she could speak. There's no argument here, he said, his voice colder than before. If you don't do this, Shino dies. The finality in his tone left no room for doubt. The girl fell silent, her mouth snapping shut. Her teammate stood beside her, and Naruto gave a brief nod before forming a familiar seal. A shadow clone appeared beside him, crouching before standing and walking over to the two genin. This is all I can offer, Naruto said, his voice more serious than before. I need whatever chakra I have left in case anyone else is in danger. The one who poisoned Shino might still be lurking around. You need to move quickly. The other two genin nodded, understanding the urgency. Without wasting another second, they turned and headed toward the village, Chouji carrying Shino carefully on his back. Naruto watched them disappear from view before letting out a long breath and turning back to the path he had been traveling. As he sighed, leaning back to fall off the large branch, a wave of senbon struck where he had been just a moment earlier, the poisoned needles embedding themselves into the tree. The faint scent of poison filled the air, and Naruto's eyes snapped upward as his attacker dropped down from above. It was one of the three sound genin from earlier, the puppeteer who had humiliated him in front of the third Hokage's grandson. He looked worse for wear, his strange attire tattered, his face painted in blood. Naruto assessed the situation in seconds. He's exhausted, he concluded. The puppeteer's technique demanded high chakra control and could drain energy quickly over prolonged use. But this guy shouldn't be this bad off. A realization struck him, he lost. Shino beat him. The bugs nearly drained him dry, but the poison's taking effect. He's too weak to continue the fight, probably trying to recover when we showed up. Naruto smiled to himself. He was ready to end this quickly so he could move on and help the others. But then another thought crossed his mind. He's the Kasuke's son, he recalled. The Toad Sage had mentioned that all of the Tsunade genin were children of their cage. Killing him could cause problems later. Even if Naruto hated Suna right now, he knew sparing the life of the Kasuke's son might work in his favor down the line. That was for later. For now, he had a fight to finish. You're looking a bit wobbly, Naruto taunted with a grin. Maybe it's time you rest, the Tsunade genin scowled. You'll be the one resting when I'm done with you, brat. Naruto rolled his eyes, unimpressed. Really, that was your comeback. Top-notch material, I gotta say. The Tsunade genin sneered. Enough talk. Naruto tensed as the genin raised his hands, fingers twitching. He heard something whizzing through the air. Reacting quickly, Naruto leaned back, but instead of falling, he hooked his chakra to the branch and swung to the underside. From there, he quickly formed hand seals. Futen, Daitapa, wind release. Great breakthrough. A blast of wind shot out toward the Tsunade genin, who cursed and leaped backward, narrowly evading the attack. He landed on the next branch with a grunt, dropping to his knees. Naruto didn't give him a chance to recover. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance, landing a punishing right hook that sent the genin spinning. A follow-up left punch to the stomach forced him to spit blood, and a final right knee to the face sent him crashing to the ground. Easy, Naruto muttered, hands on his hips, surveying the fallen genin with disdain. But the Tsunade genin wasn't out of the fight yet. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as the genin's finger twitched. Before he could react, a sharp pain erupted in his chest. A blade, cold and sharp, pierced through him. The Sannin followed the order, moving toward the barrier of purple fire that separated the elder Hokage from the rest of the world. Ignoring the twisted face of the unknown sound ninja before him, Jiraiya focused on the interior of the barrier. What he saw left him speechless. Standing tall and dignified were two men he never imagined he would encounter. The first and second Hokages. The legendary Senju brothers, the very foundation of this village, and by extension, the entire shinobi world. These were two of the most iconic and powerful figures in history. Two shinobi who had long since passed. The Toad Sage didn't know how to react as he took in the scene, his elderly sensei clad in the black armor he wore in his youth, standing before a trio of legendary figures, two of whom had been dead for decades. Orochimaru's sneer greeted him from behind two large stone pillars that Jiraiya quickly realized were actually sealed coffins. A third coffin, bound with a trio of shuriken, caught his eye. The identity of the occupant was painfully obvious. A surge of rage built up inside him, more intense than anything he had felt before. Jiraiya's mouth snapped open, his teeth bared in an instinctual snarl. His large hands clenched into fists, trembling with fury as he struggled to maintain his composure. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice tight with emotion. The two deceased Hokages turned their attention to him with black eyes, eyes that had never belonged to them in life. They regarded him curiously before both shifted to look back at the third Hokage. "And who is this Hiruzen?" the man with the long brown hair asked. "I don't recall him." "I do," the other answered before the Sandaime could. "Another of his students, the second one." "Really?" A tone of curiosity seeped into the voice. "Another student, Hiruzen. Did you take on a whole team?" The elderly Hokage chuckled with a warmth that Jiraiya hadn't expected. He nodded his head in acknowledgement. "Indeed, I did. This is Jiraiya-kun, the student I'm most proud of." "I see. Well then, how do you do?" The first Hokage turned his attention back to the sage. Jiraiya blinked, caught off guard by the sudden address, and fumbled for a response. Fine, sir." He hesitated, the surrealness of the moment nearly easing his anger, but only for a second. His rage flared up again. "Actually, no. I came up here to find my old teammate has trapped our sensei inside a barrier and is summoning you two to do." "What exactly?" The second Hokage grunted in confirmation. "My ninjutsu." "Ito Tensei." The first Hokage snapped his gaze to his brother. "You really went through with that abhorrent technique." Anger flared in his voice, replacing the calm he had shown toward Jiraiya. The second Hokage, however, seemed unfazed as he met his brother's gaze. "I did it to protect the village." He responded indifferently. "It was meant to be a forbidden jutsu, only to be used in extreme circumstances. If the village faced total destruction, I intended for it to summon reinforcements." "And now you're being used against the village," the first Hokage retorted bitterly. "A fine legacy, brother." "Enough of this bickering," a new voice interrupted. All heads turned to the pale, snake-like figure of Orochimaru, his twisted smile stretching across his face like an insidious snake. The first Hokage's expression shifted to one of amusement. "You're quite rude," the first remarked with a wry smirk. "I'm sure little Saru didn't teach you to speak that way. He was never one for such harsh words." Orochimaru blinked at the remark, before his face contorted into a scowl. Jiraiya watched as he threw two kunai with attached seals toward the legendary Hokages. The two men slumped, their bodies rigid and lifeless, before jerking back to full height. Their faces blank, emotionless puppets to Orochimaru's will. The fury inside Jiraiya intensified, and despite the looming barrier in front of him, he felt his fist raise against his will. "Jiraiya," his old sensei's voice cut through the tension, halting his hand midair. Jiraiya blinked, looking up at the Hokage, who stood calmly across from the resurrected Hokages. Sarutobai's arms were crossed, his gaze fixed on the two Senju brothers, ignoring Jiraiya entirely. "Get rid of the remaining snake summons in the village and then track down the Sand Jinchuriki." The words came as a command. Jiraiya hadn't received direct orders in such a long time. "Sensei, I came here to break the barrier," Jiraiya protested, frustration building. "I need time to study it and figure out a countermeasure. I'll handle it after I remove Orochimaru's head." The Sandaime's words were delivered with such force that Jiraiya couldn't recall the last time his sensei had spoken with such conviction about an enemy. It was clear what he thought of Orochimaru, There would be no mercy this time. Orochimaru's smirk didn't falter. He chuckled lowly, his yellow eyes gleaming. You seem confident, Sarutobi-sensei. But surely you can still count, can't you? You're outnumbered 3-1. The old Hokage sneer was sharp. You mean 2-1? I don't see you as a real threat, child. The words stung, and Orochimaru hissed in response, his expression twisting with anger. Jiraiya couldn't help but smirk at the sight. Orochimaru had always been easy to bait with the right words. We'll see who's left standing after this. Orochimaru's shrill voice was the last thing the old Hokage heard before the two resurrected Hokages sprang into action. Sarutobi, halfway through hand signs, dropped to the ground and slammed his palms into the rooftop. The ground beneath them shifted within seconds, transforming into a new battleground. Jiraiya's eyes flicked to the scene before he turned and leaped from the roof, ignoring the tension in Sarutobi's eyes. The old man's face revealed the harsh truth. This could very well be the final battle for Hiruzen Sarutobi. Goodbye, sensei. Jiraiya thought as he plummeted toward the village below, where he knew more of Orochimaru's snakes were wreaking havoc. The least he could do was follow the Hokage's final command. But if Orochimaru was still alive when he returned, there would be no power in the world that could stop him. The blue eyes rose to meet his. I said, the blonde began, shifting the weapon in his hands. That this was totally, way too easy, came a whisper, sliding into his ear like a snake dragging itself across the ground. The Sand Genin barely had time for his eyes to widen in shock before thin strands of ninja wire constricted around his neck. His hands shot up, but his puppet tumbled from the branch as the clone it had been embedded in vanished. Naruto, hanging upside down from the branch below, leaned back and pulled harder on the wire. The Kasuke's-san gasped as the sharp thread dug into his windpipe. His vision blurred, his chest heaving as he clawed at the wire, strangling him. His legs kicked uselessly, struggling for leverage but failing to find a solid hold. Then, just like that, the pressure was gone and the boy gasped in a breath. He blinked once before his vision was suddenly filled with a fist, which the blonde slammed into his face. Once, twice, 3 times, until a crack echoed, signaling a broken nose. Naruto quickly stood, glancing around before rubbing the middle of his chest, where the phantom pain of the blade lingered. It had drained more chakra than he'd intended to maintain a clone that lasted as long as it did, but he hadn't had a choice. He had to give credit to the Sand Genin for cleverly hiding the puppet in the trees above them. Without knowing its location, Naruto had been forced to bait it out with a decoy. It still hurt like hell, and the blonde stepped back before delivering a foot to the older boy's stomach. You're lucky you're the son of a Kage, Naruto said, glaring down at him. Otherwise, I'd drive a kunai straight into your skull. The Sand Genin did nothing but cough up blood. Naruto looked down at the broken boy, shaking his head at the pathetic sight. This guy was too brutal for his own good. Now, I'd usually follow up with whatever info you have, the blonde began, but I'm guessing you're just a little punk who couldn't keep up. The others must have left you behind. That means you're not important enough to track. He grabbed the boy's chin and yanked it up, forcing their eyes to meet. Run away, coward, he spat, a fury building. Run away like the scared little bastard who abandoned his brother because he was too afraid to be a proper sibling. And when you get back to your hellhole of a village, tell them that despite all the ambushes and sneaky tactics, you and your little gang still got your asses handed to you. And then, Naruto was gone, leaping into the trees, moving toward the continuing trail of markings. Another broken body lay in his wake. The day had been long, his body aching, but he could feel it, everything was nearing its end. After this, he'd finally get the rest he deserved. Kakashi sprang from the shattered building he'd been hurled into moments earlier. The Leaf Jonin swiftly dipped low, dodging the barrage of bone shards his opponent hurled at him. Unfazed by Kakashi's fluid movement, the sound shinobi surged forward, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. With his single sharing an eye, Kakashi was fully prepared for the imminent collision. A kunai appeared in his right hand, as if summoned from thin air. The elite leaf ninja swung the weapon in a wide arc toward his attacker, aiming for a clean strike to the throat. The blade might as well have been made of paper, so ineffective was it against the hardened bones of the Kaguya clan. The sound shinobi casually deflected the blow with his forearm. In a seamless motion, he stepped forward with his right foot and thrust his left arm forward, aiming an open-palmed strike. Kakashi tilted his left shoulder just enough, gritting his teeth as the sharp bone that jutted out tore through his tactical vest like a knife through butter. Reacting quickly, Kakashi shifted his weight onto his left foot and retaliated with a swift chakra-charged front kick. The blow slammed into the Kaguya's sternum, forcing him to stagger back, giving Kakashi a moment to toss his kunai at the man's eye and flicker away in a blur. Reappearing in a low crouch, Kakashi flowed through a rapid series of hand seals, his body still sliding to a stop. He slammed both hands onto the ground, lifting his head just in time to catch his opponent's movement. With his enhanced vision, Kakashi adjusted his stance and flooded the earth beneath him with chakra. Daten, Doryu Taiga, Earth Release, Earth Flow River. The earth around Kakashi's feet liquefied into a muddy torrent, catching the Kaguya shinobi off guard as his footing faltered. As he tried to brace himself with the bone blade protruding from his hand, Kakashi wasted no time in unleashing another jutsu. Katen, Gakkyū no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball. The sound ninja sneered as the fireball engulfed him, but Kakashi was momentarily blinded by a surge of dark chakra. He narrowly avoided a new projectile with a swift roll to the side. A split second later, the Kaguya ninja closed in, palm aimed at Kakashi's chest. Kakashi parried with his left hand, narrowly dodging a follow-up slash and ducking under the next strike. The Jonin closed in under his opponent's guard and drove his right shoulder into the man's chest. But just as he did, the Kaguya's rib bones shot forward, piercing Kakashi's throat. The Kaguya prodigy glanced down at the fallen Jonin, a cruel smirk tugging at his lips as Kakashi clutched his neck, desperately trying to stem the blood. "Dance of the Willow," he muttered. "Foolish to try and stop me. In the end, you die like the trash you are." The words died on his lips as the Jonin began to glow. A flash of light followed, and then a surge of lightning chakra coursed through the Kaguya shinobi's body. His body seized up in agonizing paralysis as Kakashi's Raiten Cage Bunshin activated. The real Kakashi burst through the window just as the clone's lightning completed its effect. Without hesitation, Kakashi moved through another set of seals. "You're skilled but arrogant," Kakashi said coolly, his right hand steadying his wrist. "In the end, that's your downfall." With no more words, Kakashi surged forward, his arm raised. Chidori, Stage 4. The Shoten the remaining three-leaf ninjas observed in awe, stunned by what had just unfolded. Naruto slowly lowered his hand and rose from his crouch. A tremor passed through his body as the exhaustion of the day began to settle in. His chakra coils burned from the immense effort, and he could feel the physical toll of his previous actions. The Kawamori exchange with Sakura was more noticeable than he had anticipated. The last maneuver would surely leave him sore for days to come. Still, the result was nothing short of miraculous. "I can't believe I actually managed to pull that off," Naruto thought, slightly surprised at his own success. "I wasn't sure if it would even work, but I always seem to perform better under pressure." A cool breeze swept across him, and he took a deep breath to steady his racing heart. His eyes darted around the area as he caught a brief reprieve from combat. To his right, the other two members of his squad were in various states of shock. Sakura, the only female member of their team, was propped up on her elbows, her eyes wide and mouth agape as she stared at him. She looked almost comical, like a fish out of water. A few branches away, Sasuke kneeled, clearly worn out from his earlier jutsu. His Sharingan had faded, replaced by the coal brown eyes he had been born with. He glanced at Naruto with a look of disbelief, though his expression remained more composed than Sakura's. On the opposite side of the clearing, Shikamaru stood, having already risen to his feet. He took advantage of the distraction caused by Naruto's jutsu and had hooked the unconscious form of their teammate over his shoulder. Despite the situation, his face remained composed, though his eyes revealed his surprise. Finally, Naruto turned to the left and looked upward. Higher in the canopy, the sand ninja, once known as Gaara, now appeared as a swirling mass of sand, vaguely resembling a creature on all fours. It glared down at Naruto with a mixture of irritation and frustration. It had hoped to end Sakura's life with its previous attack, only to have it thwarted by Naruto's wind ninjutsu. Unlike the others, Gaara showed no signs of surprise. Instead, it glared at Naruto with a fierce scowl, clearly upset that its target had not only survived but also been replaced by another. Not that the blonde minded too much. "It can't be helped," Naruto thought as he locked eyes with the beast. "I would have preferred to keep this technique under wraps until I had a better grasp of it. But without it, I'd have been a goner after that last hit." His grimace quickly shifted into a deep frown. "Now I'll have to deal with everyone hounding me about it, especially Sasuke. He only found himself in this mess because of Sakura, as usual." Come to think of it, he was also angry with himself for rushing to her aid. Unlike Aburame, she had made his life a nightmare ever since they were academy students, and it had only gotten worse after they became ninjas. The same went for the Nara heir. Yet, despite all that, he still expended his chakra to save them without thinking twice. It seemed like, for all his resolve to stop helping those who had tormented him, when the moment came to act, he did so without hesitation. Maybe that spoke to his character's strength, or maybe it revealed a lack of true resolve. Either way, it was something he'd have to correct. How? The single word summed up the thoughts of all four genin. Naruto tilted his head and glanced back at Sasuke. The surprise had faded, replaced by a hard expression. His voice was sharp, and his dark eyes had become piercing. It was clear Sasuke demanded answers, and he wanted them now. Exactly what Naruto had expected. Naruto turned his attention back to the scene in front of him. The fruits of his labor stretched before him. The sand that had been heading for Sakura was now frozen in place, halted by his elemental control. In its place stood a magnificent display of colors. Pink, blue, red, and green wove together in jagged patterns. "Shoten," Naruto announced. "The crystal release." Silence followed. "The crystal release," Sasuke repeated after a pause. "Shoten," Naruto resisted the urge to sigh. "Exactly what I just said." He extended his left hand toward the glowing construct, and with a subtle flicker of chakra, it began to dissolve into tiny luminous specks. Like falling stars scattered across the sky, he turned his gaze back to Sasuke. "It's like you're sharing in. This is the limit of my inheritance." The hiss of a massive serpent echoed from above. Its eyes glared menacingly as it coiled its long body, crushing anything unfortunate enough to be in its way. Its mouth opened, revealing fangs the length of street lamps, dripping poison thick enough to knock out a man with a single whiff. Jiraiya of the Sannin stood unfazed. He faced the rampaging serpent with arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Around him, shinobi from all three villages scattered, avoiding the creature's deadly strike zone. Jiraiya's brown eyes narrowed, and a smirk spread across his face as he stared down the creature. "Let's get to it then," he declared, part annoyance, part defiance. The massive reptile's eyes fixed on him, and as if accepting the challenge, it reared back and bared its fangs. In an instant, it launched at Jiraiya with blinding speed that defied its size. It was too slow. Jiraiya had already evaded by the time the serpent struck, his body flickering out of existence and into the air. His right thumb rose to his finger, and before his feet touched the ground, hand seals were completed at a speed even the fastest jounin would have trouble following. Landing in a crouch, he slammed his palm to the earth, chakra flowing from deep within him. A cloud of white smoke erupted from the summoning, large enough to obscure everything around them. The mist swept over buildings, cascading down alleyways, and enveloping everything in its dense, life-infused energy. Ninja from all factions recoiled, shivering from the chakra's heavy density. Then, with a powerful gust of wind, the smoke was blown apart. A massive toad, twice the size of a house and 3 times its weight, stood where the serpent had once been. Its enormous body crushed the viper underfoot, leaving only its destroyed head behind. The toad let out a deep croak before leaping into the air, searching for its next target as the viper's corpse dissolved. Jiraiya surveyed the battlefield before signaling to a nearby building. Moments later, a window shattered and a Black Ops shinobi appeared in front of him in a body flicker. The ANBU agent bowed deeply to the legendary Toad Sage. "Jiraiya-sama." Jiraiya met the agent's gaze, unperturbed by the chaos around them. "What's so important?" The agent shifted, nervous. "The enemy has a Jinchuriki," Jiraiya continued. "The Suna Genin from the final part of the exam. I know you might not be familiar with the techniques to suppress a Biju's power, but we don't have many options right now. Hold off the snake while I deal with this. If you can't stop it, just do your best to contain it." A simple nod. "Keep an eye on Uzumaki, Naruto, and Uchiha Sasuke. They can't fall today. If you can, evacuate them out of the forest if things get worse with the Ikibai." The agent stiffened but nodded again before vanishing. Jiraiya observed him for a moment, then flickered away after his toad, leaving the battle to the younger shinobi. The raw kinetic energy of the wind release technique tore through the surrounding trees, ripping bark from trunks like the skin of an orange being peeled. Naruto had barely escaped in time, leaping sideways the moment he sensed the surge of chakra. From his midair position, he witnessed the raw power of the Suna Jinchuriki's technique in awe. "If that had hit me," Naruto thought as he landed on another tree, his chakra keeping him attached instinctively. The sand creature turned its head, following him with its gaze a fraction of a second, before a quartet of shuriken embedded themselves in its unprotected back. It growled in annoyance, the sound resonating deep within it as it spun around, aiming its wrath at the source of the attack. Sakura froze, still holding her arm out after the throw, her face awkward. She muttered awkwardly. Naruto sighed, muttering to himself. Idiot. The creature's growl deepened, vibrating the air as it hunched forward. Its body began to twist and coil as it formed into a tight mass of sand, slowly compacting into a sphere before a powerful, reverberating bark filled the air. This is going to be bad, Naruto thought, his eyes narrowing in anticipation. Actually, scratch that. I know I'm going to hate this. Before he could brace himself, the mass of sand surged outward in every direction, exploding into a wild storm of sand particles. A wave of pressure filled the air, an oppressive tension that gripped every person in the village. It felt like the electricity of an approaching storm, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on everyone like the weight of a coming disaster. A thunderous boom echoed from the distance, shaking the streets of Konoha to their core. An overwhelming surge of dark chakra followed, sweeping over the village in a sudden, unrelenting wave. It felt wrong, like a threat far greater than anything they had experienced before. The people halted mid-action, eyes wide, frozen in the wake of the feeling. Jiraiya recognized it almost instantly. The roar that followed shook the very ground beneath them, rattling buildings down to their foundations. The villagers turned toward the source of the sound, watching in awe and terror as a nightmare unfolded before them. The sand-based Biju towered over the landscape, reaching one massive paw toward the sky before slamming it down with a resounding crash. Its mouth opened, stretching wide enough to block out the last rays of the setting sun. The great shoulders of the creature loomed over the village as it reared up on its hind legs, roaring its fury at the world. Even shinobi from Suna and Oto, aware of the plan, stood in stunned silence alongside the citizens of Konoha. A palpable sense of fear swept over the village, causing many to freeze in place, watching as the terrifying creature fully revealed itself. The Ikibai roared again, its gaze sweeping across the world, locking onto everything and nothing at once. Then, to everyone's shock, the creature's jaw cracked open, revealing rows of sharp teeth, before it began to laugh. The sound sent a chill down Jiraiya's spine, reminding him of the insane laughter of someone lost to madness. But this was darker, more disturbing. It was a sound that made the hairs on his neck stand on end as it echoed across the land. It's mad, Jiraiya thought, grimacing as the sight before him sent a deep unease through his body. Completely insane. He'd heard the stories. How Suna had deliberately left the seal for their Jinchuriki flawed to allow the Biju's power to leak out at critical moments. He'd heard about the restless nights and instability plaguing the Jinchuriki over the years, and how the host of the Ikibai had been the most volatile of them all. And yet nothing could have prepared him for the monstrous presence of the Biju in its full, unrestrained form. I have to get over there, Jiraiya thought urgently. Those kids may still be alive. Freedom! The sudden declaration pierced the tension, halting everyone in their tracks. Eyes went wider as people processed the words, hearing the creature speak in human language for the first time. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. I'm free, the creature shouted, its tone mixed with joyous madness. The air, the ground. So fun, the beast's deep belly laugh rumbled again, sending ripples of fear through the crowd. People took a step back, realizing the full weight of what was happening. So much to do. So much to see. The beast puffed out its chest before exhaling in satisfaction, a grin stretching across its wide mouth. So much to kill. Jiraiya's stomach churned as the creature's malevolent gaze turned toward the village. Its yellow eyes narrowed, its grin growing more savage, and a heavy, oppressive aura descended upon them. It was as if the air itself had turned to poison. The massive beast took a step forward, shaking the ground beneath its weight. I'll start here, it bellowed. There's plenty of humans to kill. Jiraiya gritted his teeth, watching the creature's movements with growing horror. He had to act now. With a swift motion, he launched himself into the air, landing on a nearby building for a better vantage point. I need to summon Gamabunta. But before he could complete the necessary seals, his sharp senses caught a faint pulse of chakra, smaller but growing stronger. The Ikibai stopped mid-step, its massive head turning toward the source. Heh, it muttered in confusion. Jiraiya's heart skipped a beat as the pulse grew more intense. The great sand creature turned fully, its eyes widening in recognition of something else in the distance. A cloud of smoke exploded from the ground, rising high above the treetops. Jiraiya's eyes widened, realizing who had arrived. Naruto. As the smoke cleared, a low growl echoed from the mist, a mechanical-sounding growl that sent a chill down everyone's spine. The Ikibai crouched down, preparing for the new challenger. Jiraiya watched in amazement as the creature took shape, a massive reptilian figure, its tail sweeping across the ground, uprooting trees in its path. Its maw opened wide, saliva dripping from its mouth as it slowly emerged from the cloud. The sand creature sneered. And who the hell are you supposed to be? In response, the reptile hissed, its skin pulling back to reveal a strange hood-like formation on its head. Jiraiya blinked, his grin faltering. What the hell is that thing? His body was in agony. What had begun as a simple headache had now escalated into a full-blown migraine, and his clothes were torn in so many places it was impossible to count. He felt more exhausted than he ever had, each breath a struggle. Waves of fire coursed through his body as his chakra coils fought to handle the overwhelming power of the nine-tailed fox that surged within him. But despite everything, he stood strong. The blonde glared at the massive form of the creature before him. The Ikibai towered over the forest, its yellow and black eyes radiating malice. The hatred it bore was evident in its very gaze, a primal fury that could not be hidden. Sand cascaded off its form, constantly shifting like a golden tide. Its claws, the size of horses, scraped against the earth as it shifted its weight onto its hind legs. It was a beast of legend, a terror that was supposed to be mere myth. It would be impressive if it weren't trying to end his life. I asked you a question, or incredibly annoying. The genin thought with a grimace. Well, Shurai, Naruto began, looking down at the summon beneath his feet. How's this for a dire situation and a worthy adversary? The enormous reptile beneath him raised its two red eyes, glaring at him. A growl rumbled deep from its chest, vibrating through Naruto's body. He looked down, unimpressed by the threat, and casually spread his arms to present the creature he'd summoned. The drake, a descendant of the ancient dragons that once ruled the world, was formidable in its own right. It had a sleek, muscular body beneath its leathery skin, its dark form marked with neon blue stripes. The beast hunched lower, drawing in a deep breath. What? I told you I got into some serious trouble. The genin shrugged, gesturing at the Biju. Part of my charm, really. The drake's long, pink tongue snaked out, tasting the air as it looked at the giant sand creature across from it. The Ikibai hadn't moved, its hate-filled eyes locked onto the new nuisance. The drake bared its teeth, rows of needle-sharp daggers visible. A worthy adversary indeed, the drake's deep voice rumbled, a hint of amusement in its tone. Such an unusual creature, though. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that, a grin spreading across his face. You have no idea who that is, do you? The summon's gaze shifted back to Naruto, its eyes narrowing slightly. That's the Ikibai, Naruto explained, his grin widening. One of the 9 Biju. The wind carried his words away like the rustling of leaves. The Ikibai, the drake seemed puzzled, then clarified. A Biju, Naruto nodded slowly. The drake's gaze moved back to the sand beast, and after a beat, it let out a low hiss of amusement. A more worthy opponent than I anticipated. I can see why you called for me. Naruto shrugged, the grin still on his face. Well, I thought it would be rude to summon your older sibling or father. You should get the first shot, after all. The drake gave a sound of agreement. Plus, your brother's a bit of a jerk. Another sound of agreement. Hey, stop ignoring me, Naruto scowled. What an annoying creature. You know what? The Ikibai yelled, shifting its weight again. I don't care who you are anymore, I'm just going to kill you. At least he's direct about it, Naruto muttered as he leaned closer to his summon. The blonde took a deep breath, closing his eyes as he focused to draw more of the Kyubai's chakra through the thin opening of the seal. The strain made him want to scream, but he forced the energy through his chakra coils, flooding them with raw, destructive power. Please don't let this kill me. The chakra's effects were nearly instantaneous. The whisker-like markings on his face darkened and spread, his nails grew into sharp claws, and his gums burned as fangs began to sprout. His muscles ached as they expanded, and his senses exploded into overdrive. Colors and sounds overwhelmed him, the power of the Kyuubi distorting everything around him. One more battle, just one more, and then I can rest. Hopefully, a deep growl broke through his thoughts as the Ikibai began inhaling deeply, preparing its attack. Naruto grimaced, quickly forming hand seals for a counter. You ready, Shurai? Naruto shouted as the Biju began to rear back. The drake snorted, its body lowering even further. Does it matter? Nope, Naruto grinned. Just thought I'd ask for the sake of politeness. A magnificent spectacle, Sarutobi remarked with a soft smile, despite the numerous scratches and wounds on his own body. Don't you think? Orochimaru's teeth ground together as he watched the fight unfold. He stood behind the first and second Hokage statues, eyes locked on the colossal battle below. His former master's comment had only deepened his frustration. What is that? Orochimaru demanded, his voice tight with disbelief. Sarutobi's smile widened slightly. A summon, I suppose. Or at least, that's what I'd call it, given the cloud of smoke that came before it. I've never seen anything like it. What is it? No clue, the Sandame shrugged casually. Didn't ask the summoner for a name. Fascinating creature, though. Looks like a lizard, but much more useful than your typical reptile. As if on cue, the massive reptile lunged to the side, its skin flaps glowing blue as it unleashed a bolt of lightning toward the Ikibai. The crack of thunder filled the air as the attack struck, only briefly disrupting the sand beast's form before it began to flow back together. I doubt it will defeat the Biju, Sarutobi mused. But it will certainly buy us time until Jiraiya or another countermeasure arrives. Orochimaru turned his cold gaze back to the older man. Not if I go out there and kill everyone myself, he sneered, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Or perhaps I'll just use Manda to wipe out this entire village. That suggests you'll be leaving this rooftop alive. Sarutobi replied coolly, undeterred by the threat against his village. But we both know that's not going to happen. He emphasized his point by tightening his grip on the staff, slamming it onto the roof with a resounding thud. You're awfully confident for someone who's long past their prime, Orochimaru retorted. I'll enjoy savoring the final moments of your life, Sarutobi-sensei. The Hokage chuckled. You've been promising to kill me for over an hour, yet all you've done is hide behind my former students like a coward. When will you learn? You can't defeat me, boy. That seemed to provoke the snake Sannin. In a blur of motion, Orochimaru darted past his silent associates and halved the distance between them in an instant. Sarutobi was prepared, inhaling deeply before forming a half-seal with his left hand and advancing forward. Katen, Karyu and Dan, fire release. Fire dragon projectile, the torrent of flames surged forward like a wild river. Orochimaru didn't hesitate, smoothly swerving to the left to avoid the attack. The Sannin accelerated further, halting in a fluid motion less than 2 steps from his former teacher. He spun with precision, launching a heel kick aimed at Sarutobi's head. Without flinching, the Hokage adjusted his staff to intercept the strike, and in a blur of motion, a body flicker brought him into range, swinging his weapon with the precision of a bat. Orochimaru nimbly withdrew his leg, dropping into a crouch and balancing on his hands before sweeping his right foot at Sarutobi. The Hokage leaped nimbly, adjusting his grip on his staff and bringing it down with speed toward Orochimaru's skull. Once again, the Sannin evaded, spiraling to the right as the force of the staff cracked the tiles beneath them. In one smooth movement, Orochimaru rose, thrusting his head forward. Sarutobi gritted his teeth and narrowly avoided the dangerous blade that extended from the Sannin's mouth. The sword of Kusanagi. Sarutobi grimaced as he stepped back, surprised by the weapon's sudden appearance. I had forgotten about that. The Sannin casually regurgitated the sword's hilt and swung it with practiced ease. You've certainly managed to keep your speed in your old age, Sarutobi-sensei, Orochimaru taunted as he twirled the blade in a smooth circle. I expected to have already skewered you by now. Happy to disappoint, Sarutobi shot back with a dismissive snort. I see you still possess that sword, what a shame. Oh ho. Worried, Orochimaru grinned, sliding his right foot back as he lowered himself into a crouch. I would be too. Disappointed, Sarutobi replied, shaking his head as he eyed the sword now poised above the Sannin's head. A weapon like that is wasted on someone like you. Orochimaru's grin widened ominously. Funny, I said the same thing about this pitiful village many times before. Until I realized better. The Hokage remained silent, only raising his left hand to his lips. Futon, Shinkujayoku wind release. Vacuum sphere, Orochimaru quickly retreated as 3 wind bullets slammed into the area he'd just occupied. With swift reflexes, the Sannin dodged and weaved, avoiding the barrage of wind ninjutsu. Sarutobi clenched his teeth as the Sannin closed in once again, dropping his hand to ready his staff for defense. He's relying on his youth and strength against me, Sarutobi thought, spreading his legs for better stability. Even he's not arrogant enough to engage me in a full ninjutsu battle. Despite the frustration, part of Sarutobi couldn't help but feel a small sense of admiration for his former student's tactics. It was like Orochimaru to exploit a weakness rather than indulge in flashy techniques like many others would have. A part of him was impressed that at least some of his teachings had taken root in the man. The other part was disgusted that he felt any pride in that. Stepping back to give Orochimaru space to approach, Sarutobi launched a swift kick that knocked the Sannin away, giving him enough room to create some distance. Another half-seal later, a massive fireball erupted between them. As the Sannin rushed forward, Sarutobi's body flickered out of the way. Enma, Sarutobi barked, slamming his staff down and performing a chain of seals. Right, Enma responded as the staff transformed, sprouting 2 arms that grabbed Orochimaru by the wrists and a tail that coiled around his neck. I'm going to tear you apart, you little bastard, Enma growled from the staff's surface. Should have done it years ago. Orochimaru sneered, releasing the sword and letting it drop tip first onto the roof as he tilted his head back, avoiding Enma's grip. Sarutobi finished his seal, hopping to the side and then quickly backwards, positioning himself for his next attack. Raiten, giant lightning release, false darkness, the lightning shot from Sarutobi's mouth like a cannon, racing toward the Sannin. Orochimaru's eyes widened in alarm as he formed seals with both hands. Enma watched, horrified, as a second Orochimaru appeared from the first's body, slithering away with remarkable speed. What? Sarutobi blinked, momentarily stunned by the sudden change. He watched in disbelief as his lightning technique harmlessly passed through the slimy remains of Orochimaru's original body. Orochimaru, now fully formed, smirked. Come now, sensei, did you really think it would be that easy? Sarutobi's face darkened with disgust. What have you done to yourself, you fool? Orochimaru's grin grew wider. I've become better than you ever were, old man. Relying on someone else to save you, huh? A voice echoed inside the blonde's mind. Didn't he promise to stand strong with his own strength from now on? For all he knew, the person sent to help could already be dead on the way. Maybe the summon was crushed while dodging an earlier strike, or perhaps one of the giant wind jutsu the Ikibai could summon had sliced him to pieces. Either way, I'm alone in this. Watch out, the Drake warned before leaping to the side. Naruto clenched his teeth and held on tightly to the summon, using chakra to stay grounded as his stomach lurched from the sudden movement. A massive wave of sand had torn through the area they'd just occupied, shooting high into the air like a geyser erupting from the earth. Naruto winced as he saw a few sturdy trees ripped out by the roots. Hopefully, the other leaf genin had already fled, assuming they were even still alive. He snorted as that thought crossed his mind. There was no way any of them had the sense to evacuate a dangerous area, except maybe the cowardly Nara. The Uchiha, however, had definitely stuck around. The Ikibai's voice rumbled with madness. Fun, F-U-U-U-U-N, the summon growled again, clearly irritated by the insane Biju's amusement. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. The beast was just toying with them, and they could do nothing to stop it. Meanwhile, the sand brat just lay there, letting everything unfold around him. The thought halted midstream. Lying down, doing nothing. That's it, Naruto suddenly shouted, raising his arms in victory. What? The summon immediately asked. What do you see? The Suna Jinchuriki, Naruto exclaimed as he took a bold step forward, pointing toward the enormous sand beast. The other kid, like me, he's on its back. The summon's gaze shot to the spot where the boy was pointing, its sharp eyes narrowing in on the half-submerged figure clinging to the back of the Biju. And what about the human? He's asleep. And it was said earlier that all the Jinchuriki from Suna have insomnia because their seals are incomplete, Naruto explained, quickly piecing things together. That's why, if he sleeps, the Biju comes out. So we need to keep him awake. The summon growled as it processed the information. A technique that forces sleep. I was concerned about trying to kill him earlier, Naruto admitted, especially when he was already half a monster when I found him. But I worried that killing him might set the Ikibai loose. After all, just because the Kyubai's destruction meant Naruto's death didn't mean every other Biju followed the same rule. It wouldn't surprise him if the beast had presented the boy as a decoy for that exact reason. But now you don't have to worry about that, Shirai grumbled. If you can just wake him up. Then the whole thing will collapse, Naruto said, snapping his fingers. That technique was probably designed specifically for this invasion. But it'd be a hassle to let the Jinchuriki turn it on his own village whenever he wanted. Shirai nodded. It must have a fail-safe to override it. And when in doubt, punch someone in the face. The summon's maw twisted into what almost resembled a grin. That might just work too. Now the question is, how do we wake him up? That was the big question. So far, none of their efforts had made a dent in the Biju, and it was more powerful and quicker than they expected. How would they even get close enough to attack? How could they land a strike on a creature made of sand? And how could they even reach the relatively small boy on its back? Both of them arrived at the same troubling answer. Naruto, Shirai growled, muscles tense. Get ready. Naruto didn't need to ask what the summon planned. Without hesitation, he crouched low on the creature's back, focusing the Nine-Tails chakra into his lower body. This was it. One shot, and it was all or nothing. If Shirai's plan succeeded, the summon's life was on the line. Once it finished its role, Naruto would be completely alone. His body wouldn't have the strength to summon again, not for Shirai's kin, nor for anything else. I'm ready, Naruto whispered, his voice steady. The drake gave a mighty roar as its tail slammed into the ground, shaking the earth beneath them with an explosive sound that rang through the village. Naruto stood firm, eyes focused as the tension built. Naruto, the Drake rumbled again, if this works, I expect a drink. Naruto blinked. I'll steal it from the distillery if I have to. The summon growled what could almost be mistaken for a laugh as it scratched at the earth. Taking a deep breath, Naruto released it slowly. A heartbeat later, they surged forward. Shurai sprinted across the ground at a speed that left the Ikibai confused for a moment. Then the Drake crashed into the Biju with a force that sent shockwaves for miles. The ground splintered at the impact, and the Biju yelped, completely thrown off balance as the smaller summon pushed it back. Now Naruto, Shurai shouted, reaching out with his claws to hold the beast in place. Naruto didn't need to be told twice. He leapt into the air, his body transformed into a burst of red chakra, his movements blurring as he shot toward the Biju's back. With a single motion, he landed in a crouch, chakra holding him in place as his gaze locked onto his target, Gaara, the Tsunade Jinchuriki. He took a running step, propelled forward with the last of his speed as the Drake's form vanished, leaving Naruto to handle the rest. Sand rose up to intercept him, but the blonde was faster. With a primal shout, he broke free of the Sand's grip, launching himself forward with a force that made the air around him crackle. Wake up! He roared, unleashing a punishing haymaker. His fist landed with a sickening thud, snapping Gaara's head sideways. The force sent the boy's mouth flying open, and he gasped in pain as his eyes shot wide open. No, the Ikibai bellowed, its connection to Gaara severed. Victory was in his grasp. The Biju's influence evaporated, and Naruto's victory felt certain. But as he pulled away, his feet slipping in the sand, he realized the sand creature was collapsing beneath him. Awa crap, Naruto muttered as he felt the ground give way beneath him, his world going black as he lost consciousness. Just when things were going right, of course. I don't need to explain the kind of trouble we're facing, Jiraiya said. He didn't expect a response, and instead continued watching the village sprawled out beneath them. From his vantage point in the Hokage office, high atop the iconic tower, he could see a long line of villagers clad in black. Some were openly sobbing as they slowly moved along, one after the other. People of all ages, united in their grief, had gathered on this rainy, somber day to honor the great man who had served as their leader for so many years. The Toad Sage reluctantly let his eyes wander upward toward the sky. The torrential downpour that soaked the ruined village felt as symbolic as it was bothersome. Even the heavens themselves seemed to mourn for the Sandaime Hokage. Although Odo and Suna were forced back, Koharu continued, unfazed by the silence, and Orochimaru was made to retreat like the coward he truly is. We must remain vigilant. Another village might seize this opportunity to strike without warning. Not to mention the possibility of our adversaries regrouping as we speak, Himura added quietly. It would be foolish to assume they'll give up so easily after taking such bold action. Jiraiya stood up from his place by the window and faced the two elders. They stared back at him, the only reliable student of their now-deceased teacher. The weariness in his expression spoke volumes about the toll his sensei's passing had taken on him. But still, the shinobi stood tall as he moved toward them, his resolve unwavering. Any updates on the Ikibai boy? Jiraiya asked, pulling his mentor's chair from behind the old oak desk and sitting down with a weary sigh. The elderly woman shook her head. Nothing. He was apparently taken before our operative could reach him. Not that it would have mattered much, since the priority after neutralizing the Ikibai was locating Uzumaki before the other young genin. There simply wouldn't have been enough time for one shinobi to accomplish everything, especially with the Tsunade Jinchuriki still a threat. Jiraiya grunted in agreement and frustration. She was right, but it still irked him that both Orochimaru and the Tsunade Jinchuriki had managed to escape once things had begun to turn in Konoha's favor. The entire operation seemed wasted in many ways. We need to regain control, Himura stated firmly. Step by step, we must prepare contingency plans. I agree, Jiraiya said with a heavy sigh. So where do we start? The daimyo, Koharu responded immediately. His continued presence in the village is an unexpected complication. Himura nodded. It's been a week since the invasion, and he's shown no indication of returning to the capital. The Toad Sage snorted. Because he's waiting. And you both know exactly why. It wasn't hard to figure out. Himura seemed uneasy. I'm not sure it's wise to allow Uzumaki to get too close to him. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Worried Naruto might lose control. No, worried the daimyo wants him removed from the village, the retired shinobi corrected. Koharu frowned at the very thought. Do you really think he would go that far? Her question was valid. After all these years, he's never shown any interest in him before. Naruto didn't show much talent before, Jiraiya responded bluntly. But in just a single day, the entire village's perception of him has shifted dramatically, especially among the shinobi who defended the village. It was true. The shinobi who had fought to defend the streets were now speaking of Naruto's surprising contributions. Many who had once despised him were now recounting their brief interactions with him, acknowledging his unexpected assistance. He had done far more than any other genin could have in what should have been a battle well beyond his capabilities. Jiraiya felt it said just as much about his old sensei as it did the young boy himself. What would be the point of removing him? Himura wondered aloud. Right now, having him here is the best thing we can do for the whole country. What would the daimyo do with him? He could just want him gone, Koharu said quietly. Maybe Naruto's performance in the exams has made him nervous. Jiraiya fixed her with a hard gaze. I don't think the daimyo fears Naruto the way you do. Why not? The older woman shrugged. Despite his current status, there are still those who know exactly who he is and what he represents. Could it be so unbelievable that the daimyo wants to eliminate any potential threats? Naruto doesn't want to be placed in line, Jiraiya countered flatly. He doesn't even want to be Hokage, let alone rule the whole country. And does the daimyo know that? Koharu shot back. After all, he's never even spoken to the boy. Himura frowned. If that were true, he'd be far more insistent on speaking to him. The retired shinobi shifted in his seat. I agree with Jiraiya on this one, Koharu. So he just wants to talk to the Jinchuriki? Koharu asked skeptically. Forgive me if I find that hard to believe. Why not? Jiraiya pressed. They share a bond. Isn't it possible the man just wants to speak to Naruto? Koharu snorted. When you get to our age, you'll realize nothing in politics is as simple as it appears. He wants something. The only question is what? Regardless, we can't afford to deny his request, Jiraiya replied. We need the capital now more than ever. This is the first time in years that an enemy has breached our walls. The people need to see a united front between the village leadership and the leader of the country. I know that, Koharu replied tersely. I just don't like it. No one does, Koharu, Himura sighed in exasperation. But it's not like we have a say right now. Let's focus on something we can control for now. With that said, I'd like to bring something else to light. Jiraiya tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. I noticed that Danzu and his secret army were nowhere to be seen during the attack. Convenient, don't you think? A brief silence followed his words. Do you really think he had something to do with it? Koharu asked, her worry evident. Himura glanced at her from the corner of his eye. Is it so hard to believe? It wouldn't surprise me at all. I've always disagreed with Sensei on that, Jiraiya said with a frown. He allowed Danzu too much power without keeping him in check. I wouldn't be surprised if many of our recent issues stemmed from his underhanded dealings. Himura nodded. Hiruzen was always too concerned with not offending Danzu. If that's the case, the reason is clear, Koharu interjected. Even after all these years, he still covets the position of Hokage. The problem is he might just get it at this rate. A heavy silence filled the room. Jiraiya, Koharu began hesitantly, but Jiraiya cut her off with a wave of his hand. Forget it, the Toad Sage said flatly. I'd be a terrible Hokage. I can't sit still for too long, and my spy network is too crucial to the village's security. My informants won't speak to anyone else if I'm stuck in this office. He gestured around him. Koharu frowned. You're the only viable candidate. There's no one else strong enough or with the shinobi pedigree to step up. Hatake, Himura suggested half-heartedly. Maybe might. Hatake barely survived his encounter with Orochimaru's top lieutenant and even failed to land the finishing blow. The woman remarked, shaking her head with a slight scoff. If he'd pushed himself further, we probably wouldn't be in this mess. He would have already stepped up to lead in Hiruzen's place, if not for his tendency to slack off and drown in guilt. The two men remained silent, not bothering to defend the Jounin. They knew she was right. Kakashi's lack of progress, even regression in his abilities, had become a recurring issue among the village's elite. No matter how talented he once was, there was no excuse for him to have been outmatched by Orochimaru's protege in a drawn-out fight. And if he had been given multiple chances to use his own signature technique against the boy, he had clearly failed. And there was no way Guy was going to be Hokage. If we don't find anyone suitable, Danzu may end up claiming the position, Himura added, his voice tinged with concern. I can already see the daimyo bending to his will if we don't act soon. He's probably counting on that. Danzu's absence was starting to raise suspicions. The three of them lapsed into silence, contemplating the current situation. The Hokage title wasn't just a position, it was a symbol. the Hokage had to command respect from both allies and enemies. The leader needed to inspire reverence among the villagers while striking fear into their enemies. But the issue was that there weren't many shinobi left who could fill those shoes. Once, there might have been several shinobi capable of leading the village at any given time. Even just a few years ago, there would have been at least 3 viable candidates for Hokage. Now, it was a struggle to think of a single shinobi fit for the role. I might have an idea, Jiraiya said, his voice uncertain. Actually, it's the only idea I have. Himura looked at him over his glasses. Oh, a worthy candidate, the Sannin nodded. She might be the best choice we have right now. Koharu furrowed her brow. And who might that be? Her words trailed off as realization hit her. Oh, I hadn't considered that. Because it's the toughest option, Jiraiya pointed out. Tsunade is incredibly hard to track down and she's as stubborn as they come. Convincing her won't be easy, but I think I can manage. Manage? Himura scoffed, clearly skeptical. You think you can just waltz up to a woman who hasn't been to the village in nearly 20 years and get her to return as Hokage? Is she even capable of handling such a role? Of course she is, Jiraiya responded with confidence. Tsunade may not be as active as she once was, but unlike what you think, Sensei never let her roam aimlessly. I know for a fact that he frequently sent her on assignments where her medical expertise was critical. Her condition from the Third Great War is long gone. The elders exchanged surprised glances. That was something Sarutobi had successfully kept from them. That's reassuring to hear, Koharu acknowledged, but it still doesn't make me confident that she'll willingly return to Konoha, especially given her strong opinions about the Hokage position the last time she was here. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. You're right, but I have a plan. Leave the details to me. And if it doesn't work, Koharu pressed, what if you can't convince her? Then I'll take the position myself to keep Danzu from getting his hands on it, Jiraiya assured her. But I don't think it'll come to that. So what's your plan exactly? Himura asked. To remind her why Konoha needs her and what Sensei would want, Jiraiya explained. But to do that, I'll need help from the one person she can still relate to. Koharu's expression shifted as she thought. Uzumaki. Exactly, Jiraiya confirmed. Naruto and Tsunade share similar views. The difference is that Naruto has learned to set his feelings aside for the greater good. I'm hopeful he can convince her to do the same. Jiraiya shifted in his seat. Plus, this gives me a chance to take Naruto away from Konoha, with everything that's happening. I need to explain the Akatsuki threat to him, and I can train him along the way. The 2 elders exchanged a thoughtful glance, then Himura nodded. That sounds acceptable. But you're forgetting about the Daimyo. No, I'm not, Jiraiya replied, folding his arms. In fact, I think we should handle that matter directly. Well, we don't have much of a choice, do we? Koharu sighed. We'll let you take Uzumaki to meet with the Daimyo, and then you can head out on your search while we hold off Danzu from making any moves until your return. Agreed, said Himura. But we still don't know when Uzumaki will fully awaken. Jiraiya shook his head. The medics say it could happen any day now. His main issue was chakra exhaustion, which is hard to believe, considering he's in Uzumaki. But when I checked yesterday, he had already recovered half of his reserves. The only reason he's been slow to wake is because of the Kyuubi's chakra interfering with his system. Good, Koharu said. We can't afford for the village to appear weak right now. Having the Jinchuriki up and about will certainly help with that. I'll also be speaking with the Jounin about keeping an eye out for anything unusual, Jiraiya continued. And I'll take the elite Jounin aside to brief them on the Akatsuki threat. We'll need all the help we can get. Very well, Koharu sighed. We all have our roles to play. Let's get to work. Stage 5, the aftermath. The first thing Naruto noticed was the overwhelming stench. A nauseating mixture of spoiled milk and decaying plants filled the air, making his face scrunch in disgust. His bright blue eyes darted around as his left hand instinctively rose to shield his nose from the foul odor. His confusion deepened as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. A sewer? That was the only logical explanation. Dirty, murky water lapped at his ankles as large, dripping pipes loomed overhead. The sound of rushing water echoed through the walls of stone, illuminated by faint red lights that dotted the corridor. He turned around and saw an endless expanse of darkness behind him. What the hell? Naruto muttered to himself as he slowly turned in a small circle. Where am I? The only response was silence. His frown deepened as he instinctively reached for his shuriken pouch, only to realize it was empty. His eyes widened in surprise when he noticed something far more important. He was completely naked. Damn, Naruto muttered dryly as he glanced over his body. This better not be some sick joke. Once again, silence answered him. Without hesitation, Naruto began to sift through the details of his situation. The last thing he remembered was falling. The Ikibai was falling apart. I was falling, he murmured to himself. The Ikibai was breaking apart. He recalled the ground slipping away from him as the huge sand beast crumbled. Without the Biju's chakra holding it together, it had started to disintegrate, and Naruto had been caught in the aftermath. Had he died, it was a possibility. His fall might have been fatal, or perhaps the collapsing sand had crushed him. Maybe he'd suffocated, or worse, been finished off by a Suna or Oto shinobi. I hope it wasn't that creepy sand kid, Naruto muttered as he looked back to the darkened corridor. It'd suck if he came back to finish me off. A heavy silence fell over him as he considered his surroundings once more. There was no sign of anyone else, and the fact that he was alone and naked didn't comfort him. All right, standing around won't do me any good, Naruto decided. I need answers. He chose a direction, moving cautiously as his chakra pulsed faintly within him. His blue eyes scanned the path ahead, ever on the lookout for any sign of a threat. Though weaponless and drained, he didn't feel completely helpless. His wounds from the battle were gone, and now that he checked, his chakra had already begun to recover, deep within his body. Then a pulse of chakra cut through the stillness. Naruto's eyes snapped toward the west, where faint red light beckoned. His body tensed as a familiar, oppressive chakra began to fill the air around him. The Kyuubi. So this is the seal, Naruto mused as he took a step toward the glow. This is what it looks like inside. Determined to find the source of his strange surroundings, Naruto continued deeper into the sewer-like space, following the eerie red light through the twisting corridors. Did the fox spirit mend him? That wouldn't be too shocking, Naruto mused as he reached out with his right hand to grip a nearby wall. If I die, so does he. Of course, he'd want me in working shape. His train of thought derailed as he swung himself around the corner and into view of his destination. The blonde took a cautious step into the vast chamber, eyes widening at the sight of the monumental gate, stretching endlessly in every direction. Okay, that's definitely something. He stepped further into the cavernous space, taking in the enormous cage. Its bars gleamed faintly in the low light, each one as thick as the ancient trees of the Fire Country. Beyond the gate lay impenetrable darkness, stretching into infinity. At the center of it all, a single piece of paper etched with intricate seals held everything in place. Despite his animosity toward the fourth Hokage, Naruto couldn't help but acknowledge the sheer scale and craftsmanship of this barrier. To think the man had faced down a beast like this and created such a colossal prison. It was mind-blowing. Still a bastard, though. Naruto halted several feet from the bars, narrowing his eyes to peer into the shadowy abyss. If this really was the famed 8 trigrams sealing style, then the Ninetales had to be somewhere behind that wall, and there was no way in hell he was getting closer than necessary. A massive claw suddenly emerged from the blackness, crashing down in front of him with terrifying speed. The blonde didn't even have time to flinch. The sharp talons, each the size of a small house, tore through the air and slammed into the shallow water with a deafening splash. Naruto opened his mouth, probably to say something clever, but promptly shut it when nothing came out. Instead, he stared wordlessly at the enormous claw in front of him. A low rumble echoed from within the cage, and the claws slowly retracted into the dark. Well, Naruto finally muttered as the paw vanished from view again, that happened. The rumbling returned, this time more distinct. Laughter or something close to it. Quite the reaction, came a deep, earth-shaking voice from behind the bars. The force of it alone made Naruto wince. Much more amusing than I anticipated. I expected something, Naruto replied, finally recognizing just what he was speaking to. Just not that, or this conversation, honestly. A deep growl rippled through the chamber before a pair of eyes, the size of boulders, flared to life in the darkness. Naruto held his breath, locked in the gaze of something far beyond human. The Ninetales watched him like a cat inspecting a curious bug. Uzumaki Naruto, the beast rumbled, its voice like thunder rolling through a canyon. At last, we meet face to face. Naruto blinked. Yo, close enough. Kakashi leaned forward slightly in his hospital bed, observing the genin seated stiffly beside him. Coal-black eyes stared into his own mismatched gaze. One Sharingan, one ordinary, with cold intensity. The two locked eyes briefly before the younger turned away with a scowl. Across from them, the only female member of Team 7 wrung her hands anxiously. Wide green eyes flitted from her sensei to her teammates, lingering guiltily on the bandages wrapped around Kakashi's torso, a stark reminder of what he'd sacrificed during the recent battle. She felt the familiar sting of shame twist in her stomach. Everyone else had contributed. She had barely been anything more than a burden. Just another mark against her disappointing start as a kunoichi. As I said, Sasuke, Kakashi began, voice flat, I didn't teach Naruto any of those moves. If you were actually thinking clearly, you'd realize I spent all my time training you. The Uchiha clenched his fists but said nothing, his gaze fixed on the floor. Kakashi sighed, rubbing his temple. There was no getting through to this boy sometimes. But sensei, Sakura murmured from the other side, her voice hesitant. If you didn't teach him, then who did? Kakashi glanced at her and simply shrugged. He couldn't give a definitive answer. He had a hunch, of course. A certain toad-summoning sage came to mind, but he wasn't about to accuse one of the most dangerous shinobi in the village of something without proof. Besides, it wasn't like he could complain. He had handed Naruto off to someone else, hadn't he? Could he really blame the kid for seeking better instruction? In Naruto's shoes, he might have done the exact same thing. Still, this was the kind of fallout he'd been hoping to avoid. Team cohesion was already on shaky ground. The last thing they needed was Sasuke's pride cracking under the weight of Naruto's sudden progress. If Jiraiya was responsible, Kakashi was definitely going to have a word with him. I have a question for you, Sasuke, Kakashi said suddenly, redirecting his attention to his more volatile student. Sasuke met his gaze again, wary. Why does it matter so much to you? The boy blinked, caught off guard. He opened his mouth to reply, then paused. Kakashi watched him close it with a frown, clearly struggling with the question. Why did it matter? I think I know. Sakura's words were so quiet that both boys had to turn toward her to confirm she'd spoken. She flushed under their stares, fidgeting with her hands. Well, I guess it's because it's Naruto, she said finally. No one expected this from him. But why not? Kakashi asked, glancing between them. Why is it so strange to believe he's capable of growth? Because he's the class clown, Sasuke replied immediately. Kakashi let out a short breath, half amusement, half exasperation. So because he ranked lowest in your class 8 months ago, he's not allowed to improve? That's not what we're saying, Sakura said quickly. Then what are you saying? It's just seeing him pull off something so. She trailed off, hunting for the right word. Amazing, Kakashi offered. Sakura's eyes snapped up to meet his. We're not jealous. Sasuke is, Kakashi said matter-of-factly. Aren't you? You're upset that Naruto's suddenly doing things you can't. The Uchiha didn't respond. He didn't need to. But it's more than that, Kakashi went on. Naruto didn't just master a cool jutsu, he created something that might qualify as a bloodline ability. A Kekkei Genkai. That thought alone unsettles you. The scowl deepened into a full-on grimace, Onyx eyes burning with a spark of suppressed outrage. That's exactly the problem, Sasuke snapped. A bloodline ability suggests lineage, heritage. Naruto doesn't have that, he's just some orphan, he's nothing. Kakashi's gaze hardened, a flicker of disapproval flashing in his single visible eye. That's where you're wrong. The Jounin's voice dropped an octave, heavy with irritation. He is someone, whether you believe it or not. The Uchiha aren't the only name that ever mattered. Sasuke's scowl twisted. What's that supposed to mean? It means the Uzumaki clan weren't nobodies, Kakashi said sharply, shaking his head. And speaking about them like that dishonors your own lineage as well. Both Genin froze, stunned into silence. Sakura blinked before speaking first. Wait, there was really an Uzumaki clan. Her expression was a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Absolutely. And they were incredibly powerful, Kakashi explained calmly. In fact, their blood ties run close with both the Senju and the Uchiha. So Sasuke, by belittling them, you're insulting your own history too. He took subtle pleasure in watching the shock register on their young faces. But how come we've never heard about them? Sakura asked again, clearly confused. Because that was before your generation, Kakashi replied simply. Most of the shinobi from that era have either retired or passed on. Back then, the Uzumaki and their homeland, Uzushiogakure, were wiped out. Your parents were just kids when it happened. Uzu, Sasuke echoed, baffled. Then how do you know? The Jounin's earlier pride faded, his expression sobering into something far more somber. Because my family was tied to theirs. Despite being surrounded by the colossal presence of the Ninetales, Naruto stood firm. Even though the towering fox's eyes were the size of houses, a part of Naruto knew it was much, much bigger than it even appeared. Still, it was seriously badass. From below its eyes, massive teeth emerged, each as large as a small building and sharpened like blades. The great beast chuckled, a rumble that echoed through the entire space as it stepped forward, bathed in an overwhelming fiery chakra. Sup, the fox repeated, amused. That's a first. Naruto didn't respond, he just stared. I usually get screams, the Kyuubi mused. Terror, rage, not casual greetings. Hey, I like to keep things interesting. Naruto gave a half shrug. The Biju bared its teeth in something resembling a smile. I'm not human, doesn't really change anything for me. Apparently not, the beast narrowed its gaze. Uzumaki Naruto, you've become intriguing. Naruto shrugged again, cool and composed. Better than being dull. Indeed, the beast agreed. You were dreadfully boring for years. I had nothing to do but watch. But lately, well, the way you handled that tanuki brat was impressive. I did what I had to. Naruto frowned slightly. By the way, thanks. That made the Kyuubi pause, its stare intensified, burning with curiosity. What did you just say? Naruto looked up, confused. Thanks. Silence stretched between them. Explain, the fox demanded. Naruto blinked. You helped me, your chakra kept me going. Without it, I'd have collapsed long before the fight ended, and I wouldn't have been able to summon help either. The fox squinted, as if trying to understand this strange creature before it. They didn't say that, huh? Naruto added dryly. The Biju's face twisted. Clearly, gratitude wasn't something it heard often. Sounds like the last two were jerks, Naruto muttered. I know a thing or two about people who take and never say thanks. There was a brief pause before the fox gave a low, amused grunt. You are, odd, the first human to ever thank me. And not just for that. Naruto crossed his arms. Thanks for the times before too, back in the forest. At the bridge, I'd be dead twice over without you. I know this seal lets me draw on your chakra, but you could make it a nightmare. You haven't. What makes you think I did it for you? The Kyuubi asked, voice rough. Maybe I did it to save myself, Naruto nodded. Makes sense, if I die you die. Doesn't change the fact that I'm grateful. The fox rose up slightly, towering. But you're thanking me for the wrong thing, boy, Naruto frowned. What's that mean? You think I've only given you chakra. Child, that's nothing. The fox's tone was laced with pride. What I gave you is far greater, Naruto stared, then realization struck. The crystal release, the beast gave a deep guttural hum. Yes, that Keke Toda. Buried deep in your lineage. Dormant, locked away by your genetics. Without me it would have stayed that way. You means you unlocked it? Exactly, your chakra nature alone wouldn't have brought it out. I merely nudged things into place. Naruto took a slow breath, nodding. Do the other tailed beasts do that too? Not quite. Most of them are sealed inside hosts who don't come from strong bloodlines. You, however, are different. I've been inside Uzumaki vessels for generations. I understand your chakra better than anyone else. Naruto tilted his head. So why go to the trouble? The Kyuubi let out a breath that nearly knocked Naruto off his feet. Let's make one thing clear, the fox growled, lowering its head until its eyes were nearly level with Naruto's. I don't do favors, you've been reckless, undertrained, barely surviving your own foolishness. This gift, it ensures my survival. You grow stronger, you live longer, that's the only reason. Naruto absorbed the words, nodding again. Fair enough. Good, the beast declared as it sat upright. That being said, I must stress the importance of personal pride. As the first and strongest among my siblings, I cannot allow my host to be the weakest. Unfortunately, that is what you currently are. Most of the others have been sealed within their containers for years, some even for decades, and have influenced their hosts significantly. I will not tolerate my vessel being the bottom of the barrel. I don't want to be weak, Naruto replied firmly, so you won't have any issues with me trying to get stronger. I have no doubt about your ambition. But the real question is whether you can maintain the level of growth you've shown in recent months. That will determine how far you make it in this world. And if I'm going to be stuck inside you, I don't want the investment I've already made to be wasted. The fox sneered slightly. You can't keep depending on my chakra as a crutch. You might eventually run into someone capable of suppressing me, like those damned Senju or Uchiha. When that happens, your survival will come down to your own strength and determination. Naruto frowned. I get it. Keep pushing myself. That's all I ask of you, brat. Train hard and I'll continue to reward you, the fox said, lowering itself and resting its enormous head on its paws. Its eyes closed slowly. With you. The deeper I dig, the more I uncover. What does that even mean? Nothing for you to worry about right now, the beast replied calmly. Now leave, I'm done tolerating your presence. Naruto scowled. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? With an irritated snort, the giant fox opened its eyes, and a wave of suffocating chakra rushed forward. The boy barely had time to cry out and shield his face before he was forcibly expelled from the seal. The fox gave a soft growl of amusement as the boy vanished. Very curious indeed. The Uchiha heir furrowed his brow as he thought over the strange exchange. Kakashi looked between his two students and let out a long sigh. This was always a tough tale to tell. My father, he began, trailing off for a moment. He took a deep breath and swallowed the tightness in his throat. He was one of the greatest shinobi this village has ever known. Both genin turned their full attention to him, sensing the weight of his words. Even the usually aloof Kakashi appeared vulnerable, the pain behind his masked face clearly visible in his lone eye. They used to call him the White Fang of the Leaf. That name came from the unique chakra blade he carried into combat. It was said he was stronger than anyone in his generation, perhaps even surpassing the legendary Sannin. He was once considered a candidate to become the fourth Hokage. The revelation shocked both genin. The academy had never mentioned him. They were taught about notable nin from the past, especially powerful ones, yet they had never heard Kakashi's father mentioned even once. Kakashi saw their confusion and nodded grimly. The reason you've never heard of him is because of the disgrace I'm about to explain. What kind of disgrace? Sakura asked, her tone unsure. And what does this have to do with Naruto's clan? The notion that Naruto came from a noble lineage still felt strange to her. Kakashi gave her a sharp glance. I'm getting to that. She stepped back, hands up in surrender, and stayed quiet. He continued, near the end of the Second Great Shinobi War, my father was dispatched on a high-priority mission. He led a small squad deep into enemy territory, specifically, the Land of Water. Their objective was to extract a vital informant who had sent an urgent request for evacuation. This person had obtained information that could tip the scales in our favor. The mission sounds like it was at least A-ranked, Sasuke observed. Possibly S-ranked, given the circumstances. What went wrong? Kakashi nodded solemnly. Only a few days in, things went sideways. They walked into an ambush. While my father held off two of the Hidden Mist's infamous sword-wielders, the rest of his squad had to fight for their lives. One teammate was killed, another taken hostage. Despite the odds, my father managed to push the enemy back, but the mission was already unraveling. He paused again, voice quieter. He had to make a choice. Continue the mission as planned, or go after the captured comrade, who had likely already been compromised. He believed he could still save her, but it meant abandoning the rendezvous point. So he went to rescue her, Sasuke said softly. That lines up with what you always taught us, that those who abandon comrades are worse than scum. Kakashi gave a small nod. Yes, and while I still believe that, this was one of those rare times when I think the opposite would have been the better choice. Both genin were stunned. Kakashi, who always preached loyalty to comrades above all else, now admitted that his father's decision might have been wrong. He continued, his tone heavy. By the time my father reached her, it was too late. She had been tortured, violated. The informant had been discovered and executed. My father barely got his surviving team members out alive, and the one he had saved. She took her own life shortly afterward. The mission was a disaster. One of the worst the village has ever known. Sakura looked ill. Her skin had gone pale. In the brutal world of shinobi, such horrors were a grim reality, especially for female ninja. The Hidden Mist was notorious for its brutality. Even Sasuke looked shaken. His stoic expression cracked at the edges. He had been taught that saving teammates was always right. This was a harsh lesson in the gray areas of their world. He looked up. It gets worse, doesn't it? Kakashi nodded. Yes. Far worse. Sakura hurried to drag over a chair and sat down, clearly needing support. Sasuke stared at the ground, one hand gripping the edge of his seat. Kakashi took another breath. At first, the incident was buried. Only the higher-ups knew the truth. They swept it under the rug to protect my father's name. But the damage was already done. Word spread. Informants across the continent stopped working with us. They no longer trusted that we would protect them. Even today, our village's intelligence network remains weak because of that fallout. He glanced at them, then added, the real tragedy was what the informant had been carrying. Documents, straight from the Mizuki's office, outlining a secret alliance between the Hidden Mist and Cloud, possibly even with Iwa. And within those papers were detailed plans. Sakura leaned forward. Plans for what? Kakashi answered, his voice grave. The destruction of Uzumaki, the village hidden in whirling tides, the home of the Uzumaki clan. The two genin exchanged wide-eyed stares. The Uzumaki clan possessed a unique collection of talents, ones that made them exceptionally dangerous, Kakashi explained. They were highly skilled in the lesser-known art of sealing techniques, Fuinjutsu. When that was combined with their personalized Kenjutsu style and massive chakra reserves, they became a formidable force. Their strength, as well as their coastal proximity to Kirigakure, made them a target. Sasuke nodded slowly, his sharp mind beginning to assemble the pieces. They were cutting into the Mist Village's influence. Being allies of Konoha probably made it easier to justify wiping them out. Exactly, Kakashi agreed. The assault on Uzumaki happened with shocking speed. They barely had time to mount a defense. And the truth is, the situation was even worse than most realize. Uzu wasn't only home to the Uzumaki. Other powerful clans, like the Hazuki and Kaguya, also resided there. While the Hazuki had connections with Kiri, one of the Mizukage came from them. It was the Kaguya who ultimately betrayed the village. Sakura furrowed her brows. Kaguya. Why does that sound familiar? You've probably read about them in one of your textbooks, Kakashi said. They were once a notable clan, though nearly extinct now. Where did I read it? Most likely in literature about Kirigakure, he replied. The Kaguya possessed a rare bloodline ability. He'd seen it firsthand not long ago. Recognition dawned on her face. They were a major clan from the mist. And originally, a significant one from Uzu, Kakashi added. But envy and secret dealings with the Mizukage turned them against the Uzumaki. During the invasion, the Kaguya turned traitor. After the fall, both they and the Hazuki were granted noble status in the mist. So, Sakura started, piecing her thoughts together. Was the Uzumaki clan completely destroyed? Behind his mask, Kakashi grimaced. Yes and no, he said with a sigh. Despite betrayal and being surrounded by enemies, including a surprise attack from Kumo, they held out. Reinforcements were supposed to arrive, but a group from Iwagakure intercepted them before they could assist. That's another story entirely. That particular piece of history was clouded in suspicion. In recent years, many suspected that Orochimaru had played a part in Konoha's failure to aid Uzu. The unit led by the third Hokage's trusted shinobi, Kakashi's own father included, had been delayed under questionable circumstances. Given Orochimaru's later betrayal, and the Uzumaki's refusal to let him access their sealing techniques, people now speculated that his delay was intentional. Even with enemies on all sides, Uzu resisted for 4 days and 5 nights before the last defender fell, Kakashi recalled solemnly. During that time, members of key clans were evacuated. Some were hunted down later. Others found refuge in villages eager to exploit their sealing knowledge. The reason people believe Naruto is the last Uzumaki is because there's no proof anyone else survived. Sakura looked thoughtful. What about their jutsu? You mentioned they had unique Fuinjutsu and their own sword style. Did the other clans have anything like that? Yes, Kakashi confirmed, but many took steps to destroy their secrets when they knew the village would fall. Most of the Uzumaki's most powerful techniques are lost, though one major theft was the 7 swords now used by the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Those weapons were originally forged by the Uzumaki themselves. He paused before continuing, voice growing darker. As for my father, he took his own life several months later. He couldn't live with the shame. I was just a chunin on the verge of becoming jonin. That loss shaped who I became. A fact not many knew, Konoha had launched a new war soon after, a decision hidden from the public. Sasuke scoffed and crossed his arms. So the idiot had a powerful clan. Is that where he got his bloodline? Kakashi shrugged, flinching slightly at the pain it caused. Possibly. One of the Uzumaki I met had very unusual chakra. She could do things that were unheard of, even by shinobi standards. That description was, if anything, an understatement. Both genin fell silent, lost in thought. The revelation reframed how they saw Naruto. Until now, they'd thought of him as just another loud orphan. But to hear he came from a legendary clan, and that he had no one left to guide or protect him, it changed things. Kakashi glanced at them. If you're curious about his abilities, ask him directly. If he doesn't want to tell you, respect that. He never pries into your private lives. Sasuke scoffed again. Hard to do when we can't even find him. Kakashi blinked. What do you mean? Sakura stepped in. We've been searching his apartment, the Hokage's office, Ikaraku's. A jonin said he was recovering from the exams, but he's not in either hospital. Kakashi's expression turned grim. Then where was he? The first thing Naruto noticed was the dim ceiling and the buzzing lights above him. Then came the pain, an intense, burning sensation spreading through every muscle. He tried to lift his head but gave up, letting it fall back onto the mattress with a dull thud. Finally awake, the blonde tried to turn toward the voice but managed only a weak twitch. Jiraiya walked into view, a relaxed grin on his face and mischief glinting in his eyes. Took you long enough. You've been out for a week, longer than I'd ever expect from you. Naruto blinked slowly, his mind foggy. A whole week. You missed a lot, Jiraiya continued, arms crossed. The old man's gone. Orochimaru killed him, but not before the third did some serious damage. The bastard can't use ninjutsu anymore. The funeral was yesterday. Naruto's eyes widened. The third Hokage, gone, he didn't know what to feel. The old man had tried to make up for past mistakes in recent months. But he had also been the one responsible for some of Naruto's worst struggles, unintentionally or not. You gave that San Jinchuriki a real beating, Jiraiya added. He got away, but your efforts helped tip the battle in our favor. The village took a beating, but we drove them off. Naruto processed the words in silence, feeling a faint sense of relief. His fight hadn't been for nothing. Now here's the thing, the Sannin said, clapping his hands. We need a new Hokage. I'm next in line, but I really don't want the job. Luckily, there's someone else who could handle it. Problem is she's missing. Naruto raised a brow in confusion. Why me? As if reading his mind, Jiraiya elaborated, You're coming with me. I plan to teach you some things. Show you stuff you need to know. And honestly, it'll do you good to get away from the village for a while. He leaned over, looking Naruto in the eyes with a wide grin. But first, we need to get you out of this underground ANBU ward. Those guys get twitchy when outsiders hang around. Oh, and you've got a meeting with the Daimyo, too. Naruto groaned inwardly. What now? Take one more day to rest, Jiraiya said, patting his shoulder. Then we've got work to do. Chunin Uzumaki.